The defense plan. Lin Feng laid out his proposal with confidence. Both sides would take turns defending Backhill Village. This rotation would ensure that each group had sufficient rest while allowing for immediate reinforcements in case of danger. His words carried weight, and once he finished speaking, he turned to Rocky, awaiting his response. Rocky, however, did not answer immediately. Instead, he shifted his gaze toward Lilia, seeking her opinion. Among his people, Lilia was the only one with experience in commanding troops. Before the discussion had even begun, Rocky had entrusted her with the command. Thus, her judgment would be critical in making this decision. It's acceptable. Lilia gave a slight nod, agreeing with Lin Feng's suggestion. However, she didn't stop there. Her tone grew sharper as she added, Captain Lin Feng, your plan makes sense, but I hope you aren't thinking of playing any tricks. If reinforcements are needed, our commander expects absolute cooperation. No mishaps. Her words were deliberate, each syllable carrying weight. Lilia had no personal grudge against Lin Feng. In fact, she found him to be a reliable and straightforward man. But that didn't change the reality of their situation. Thunderhawk City's Guard Corps had no deep ties to Backhill Village, and trust between their groups was practically non-existent. She would not allow Rocky or their forces to be used as mere pawns in this battle against the demons. About that, Lin Feng hesitated for a brief moment before giving a wry smile. You have my word, Miss Lilia. We would never betray you. And in return, I trust Commander Rocky will do the same. As he spoke, his gaze flickered toward Rocky, his meaning clear. He shared the same concerns. With that, both sides went on to discuss the finer details of their defensive strategy. By the time Rocky, Lilia, and Monty returned to their camp, night had already fallen. A difference in strategy? As they walked back, Rocky voiced his doubts. Lilia, is alternating defenses really the best option? His instincts told him that keeping their forces together, just 300 troops in total, would make them stronger. Separating them seemed like an unnecessary risk. No, it's actually better this way. Lilia shook her head, her tone calm yet firm. On paper, combining our forces might seem advantageous, but in reality, it won't make us stronger. Why not? Because of trust, cooperation, and combat style. Lilia's experience in command was evident as she continued. Our alliance with Backhill Village is purely mission-based. There's no foundation of trust between us. In fact, we're both on guard against each other. If we merged our forces, it would only create friction instead of cohesion. Rocky frowned, listening intently. Furthermore, Lilia continued, we've never trained together. If we suddenly mix our troops, there will be no coordination. Different combat styles will clash, orders will get tangled, and instead of increasing our strength, we'll become a chaotic mess. It's better to keep our forces separate and work together as needed. Rocky nodded slowly as her explanation sank in. He had underestimated how complex leading an army truly was. The three of them continued their discussion, going over the threats posed by the black-eyed demons and finalizing their preparations. Before long, they had reached the camp, a moment of rest. Back at camp, Rocky didn't assign any further tasks for the night. Instead, he ordered his people to rest and recover. Tomorrow, their mission would officially begin. Lilia, too, returned to her tent, which had been specially arranged for her. Being the only woman in their group, she was naturally given her own space. As she stepped inside, she let out a long sigh, fatigue settling into her bones. Though Rocky had placed his trust in her by assigning her command, it also meant that the burden of responsibility was hers to bear. The Guard Corps of Thunderhawk City was the city's only defense force. If anything went wrong, the consequences would be catastrophic. From the very start, she had remained vigilant, keeping her mind sharp and her focus unwavering. But now, in the privacy of her tent, she could finally relax, if only for a moment. As she loosened the straps of her leather armor and set aside her weapons, she reached for her side sword. Then in a flash, she spun around, blade drawn. An unexpected intruder. Her instinct screamed. Someone was behind her. Without hesitation, she thrust her sword. Wait, Sister Lilia, it's me. Please stop. A panicked voice rang out just as her blade nearly struck its mark. Lilia halted her attack just in time, flicking her wrist to redirect the blade. The sharp edge grazed past the intruder's neck. It was Dusa. Dusa. Lilia's eyes narrowed in confusion. What are you doing here? The young girl stood frozen in place, her face pale, beads of cold sweat forming on her forehead. After a moment, she exhaled shakily and patted her chest. No, but you nearly gave me a heart attack, she muttered. Lilia sheathed her sword, her brow furrowing. Ever since Monty had sworn allegiance to Rocky, his daughter, Dusa, had become a part of their group. Though she hadn't been entrusted with any military secrets, she had grown close to Lilia and Aileen. But that wasn't the issue. The issue was that Dusa was supposed to be in Thunderhawk City. Lilia distinctly remembered that Monty hadn't brought her along when they left. Wait a minute. Lilia crossed her arms, her sharp gaze locking onto Dusa. Did you sneak out here on your own? Dusa hesitated, her big eyes darting around. Then, with an innocent expression, she replied, I don't know. I just woke up, and here I am. Lilia exhaled heavily. This was going to be a long night. A difficult decision. Dusa's response made Lilia sigh, pressing a hand to her forehead in frustration. Lilia's sister, please, you mustn't tell my father, or he'll scold me again. Dusa's pleading eyes shimmered with desperation. She clasped her hands together, her expression the very picture of innocence. Lilia exhaled, her frustration mounting. It wasn't an easy request. Dusa wasn't just another soldier or some reckless village girl. She was Monty's daughter. If she kept this from him and something happened, who would be responsible? Neither she nor Rocky could afford to take that risk. After a long pause, Lilia made her decision. Stay here. Don't move. Her tone left no room for argument. Dusa, sensing her irritation, quickly sat down on the bed, nodding meekly. Lilia turned and left the tent, but instead of heading toward Monty, she went straight to Rocky. She couldn't handle this alone. Rocky's dilemma. A short while later, Lilia returned with Rocky in tow. As soon as he stepped inside and saw Dusa sitting there, he froze, his eyes widening in disbelief. Dusa? How did you even get here? I thought your father had you locked up. I snuck out. Dusa fidgeted under his gaze, clearly knowing she wouldn't get away with lying. Rocky ran a hand through his hair, already feeling a headache forming. Lilia had been right, this was a problem. Monty was a proud and fearsome warrior, not someone who would take this lightly. If he found out his daughter had run off, and they had kept it from him, Rocky swallowed. He didn't even want to imagine the consequences. But then he looked at Dusa, her pleading, hopeful gaze, and he let out a sigh. The girl wasn't a soldier. She was just a child who wanted to prove herself. Fine, he relented, rubbing his temples. I won't tell your father, but you are not to leave this tent. If Monty finds out, you're on your own. Lilia and I won't protect you. Okay, I promise, City Lord. Dusa's face lit up, and she quickly swore obedience, though Rocky wasn't entirely convinced she'd actually behave. With that settled, he left the tent, feeling both relieved and exasperated. The calm before the storm. Despite the unexpected headache Dusa had given him, Rocky found that the light-hearted distraction helped him sleep more easily that night. When morning came, it was finally time for the mission to begin in earnest. At dawn, Old Jack, the chief of Backhill Village, led a group of villagers to the nearby mine to begin their work. Meanwhile, Rocky and Lin Feng mobilized their troops, placing them on high alert. Lin Feng had warned him that the first few days would likely be uneventful. While the noise from the mining could attract black-eyed demons, their usual hunting grounds were far enough away that they wouldn't arrive immediately. However, once the first demon appeared, the rest would follow like an unending tide. That was when the real battle would begin. For now, as per their arrangement, Lin Feng's troops would handle the first day of defense while Rocky's Guard Corps would take over on the second. Observing the enemy, Rocky wasn't particularly worried about the first day. Though his soldiers remained vigilant, they didn't expect immediate combat. Still, he, Lilia, and Monty joined Lin Feng atop the village's high walls to observe the terrain. You don't have to stand watch with me, Lin Feng remarked as Rocky leaned on the stone barricade beside him. You should rest while you can. The real fight is still ahead. Rocky understood the advice was well-intended, but he had his own reasons for staying. Truthfully, he wanted Lin Feng and his men to engage the demons first. Not because he was afraid, far from it, but he had never commanded over 100 troops in battle before, nor had he ever faced multiple demons at once. If he could observe their combat style beforehand, he could better prepare himself and his soldiers. So despite Lin Feng's words, Rocky remained. As it turned out, the day passed without a single sign of demons. The first day of the mission was over. A growing pressure. The following morning, the roles reversed. Now, it was Rocky's turn to take charge. Gathering his forces early, he positioned the guard corps strategically along the village perimeter, leaving Monty in charge while he and Lilia took their place atop the high wall. Standing there for the second day in a row, Rocky felt different. Yesterday, he had merely observed. Today, the weight of responsibility sat squarely on his shoulders. His fingers clenched the hilt of his sword as he paced back and forth. Maybe I should fly out and scout ahead, he muttered. If we can detect the demons early, we'll have more time to prepare. No, Lilia shut down the idea immediately. The Void Magic Armor's mana is limited, and we didn't bring many magic stones. You can't waste energy on unnecessary scouting. Rocky sighed, knowing she was right. The Void Magic Armor was one of their greatest assets, but it was only useful as long as it had mana to sustain it. Lilia placed a hand on his shoulder. Don't overthink it, she said. We've prepared for this mission for 2 months. The demons won't come this soon. Try to stay calm. Rocky exhaled deeply and nodded. Another day passed. Once again, no demons appeared. The calm shatters. By the third morning, it was Lin Feng's turn to resume the defense. Having seen nothing for 2 days, Rocky decided not to join him on the high wall. Instead, he spent the morning training with his troops, working on their coordination and morale. The drills proved effective, easing some of the tension that had been building within him. By midday, Rocky joined the soldiers for a meal, feeling slightly more at ease. But that peace didn't last. Just as he was taking a sip of water, a loud, piercing bell rang out across the village. Clang! 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 The alarm. Rocky shot to his feet, his heart pounding as he whipped around toward the source of the sound. On the high walls, soldiers were frantically ringing the warning bell, shouting down toward the camp. He didn't need to hear the words to know what had happened. The demons had arrived. His blood ran cold. The battle was about to begin.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
The bell signaling the enemy attack rang out, causing Rocky, who was initially having a good time with the guards, to immediately rush towards the high wall with Monty. What's going on? At this moment, Lilia also rushed out from her tent and quickly asked upon seeing Rocky. I don't know. It seems like the demons have arrived. Lin Feng had said that once the alarm bell on the tower rang, it meant that demons were approaching, and this was undoubtedly true. But this wasn't right, because Lin Feng had also said that it would take the black-eyed demons several days to reach Backhill Village. And even yesterday during the handover, he told Rocky to be prepared, informing him that the battle would start in 3 to 5 days. Yet today the demons had arrived? How could they arrive this quickly? Carrying deep doubts, Rocky and Lilia quickly ascended the high wall and happened to meet Lin Feng, who was coming down from it. Captain Lin Feng, what's with the bell? The demons have arrived. Without offering much explanation to Rocky, Lin Feng responded and then brushed past him, heading off the high wall towards the already prepared troops, loudly shouting at them. Everyone prepare for battle. Yes. At Lin Feng's command, the troops of Backhill Village immediately arranged themselves neatly and stood ready, and soon after, the large gate of the high wall slowly opened. This 100-warrior troop then swiftly and orderly charged out. As the troops charged out, Rocky and Lilia also climbed onto the high wall, where it was already crowded with people holding bows and arrows and others holding magic wands. They were the archers and mages of Backhill Village. Standing on the crowded high wall, Rocky looked outside and soon spotted Lin Feng leading the troops. Lin Feng, who was leading the troops out, was continuously issuing orders, and following each of his orders, the troops from Backhill Village split into 3 square formations. 3 square formations, each formed by 2 rows of soldiers, 15 in each row. The soldiers in the front row held up shields without weapons, while those in the back row wielded long spears without carrying shields. Although Rocky, who was still unfamiliar with tactics, couldn't see the purpose of these formations, he could tell that the troops of Backhill Village, although not large in number, were well trained. Faced with such a sudden situation, not a single soldier showed any sign of panic, and everyone moved smoothly and orderly into formation. After this, when Rocky shifted his gaze towards the distance, he saw 3 figures looming on the barren land. 3 demons. Although the 3 figures were still far away, at least 100 meters or so, Rocky could instantly tell that they were demons. In his line of sight, these 3 demons were quickly approaching. In just a few blinks, they had already come much closer. It's the black-eyed demons. As the demons continued to approach, Monty's voice came from beside Rocky, and hearing this, Rocky looked even more carefully at the 3 demons. These 3 demons, each over 2 meters tall, walked upright like giants, but they resembled giant lizards. They not only had large lizard-like heads and beast-like sturdy limbs, but also had exceptionally rough skin covered with dense bumps, which was revolting to look at. And accordingly to their name, they possessed a pair of pure black eyes. So these were the black-eyed demons? Watching the 3 demons steadily approaching, Rocky took a deep breath and then looked again down at Lin Feng and others below the high wall. Can these people handle 3 demons at once? Having never experienced such a battle, Rocky had no concept of the fight unfolding before him, so he couldn't help but worry. By contrast, Lin Feng, who was outside the high walls, seemed much more relaxed and calm. As the 3 black-eyed demons kept closing in, he continuously issued orders. Everyone, maintain formation. Maintain formation. Maintain formation. With Lin Feng's voice echoing, the captains of the 3 formations also kept shouting loudly, ensuring their formation stayed intact despite the demons' approach. Everyone, advance! Soon after, as the rapidly approaching demons and the troops of Backhill Village were only tens of meters apart, Lin Feng suddenly gave the order to advance. At his command, the soldiers of the 3 formations stepped forward, maintaining their cohesive formation as they advanced. Though not very fast, their approach exerted immense pressure on the demons. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Hiss, hiss. As Lin Feng led the troops forward, the 3 lizard-like black-eyed demons suddenly stopped. Then, facing the troops, they emitted a series of harsh, raspy cries before abruptly charging forward. The demons' charge came without warning and was extremely fast. It felt like 3 whirlwinds instantaneously crossed the distance of tens of meters and reached Lin Feng and his men. LB /JNN. Confronting the rushing demons, Lin Feng strode forward and collided head-on with the foremost one. Not waiting for the demon's attack, his long sword came crashing down furiously, flipping the demon onto the ground. He then followed up with several more slashes, pummeling the demon into rolling all over the ground. Of course, such an outcome was not surprising. Lin Feng was a level 6 warrior, and the black-eyed demons were not particularly strong, so naturally, they were outmatched. However, the real focus of this battle was not on Lin Feng. Even if he were made of iron, could he beat a single nail? The key lay with the troops behind him. While Lin Feng tied down one demon with his own strength, the other 2 black-eyed demons swiftly sprinted past him and, in a few moments, rushed up to the front of the 3 formations. Seeing the black-eyed demons charging at them, all 3 formations halted, and every soldier in the front rows raised their shields. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The black-eyed demon that rapidly reached the front of a formation let out a roar and viciously swung its claws at the frontline soldiers. Afterwards, a series of sounds followed as the demon's sweeping strike hit 4 or 5 soldiers, but struck only their raised shields, causing no casualties. But at that moment, soldiers from the back rows, gripping their spears tightly, suddenly surged forward and fiercely thrust their spears out. In an instant, more than a dozen spears pierced from the formation, all aimed at the black-eyed demon. Among these attacks, some missed, and some hit, but failed to penetrate the black-eyed demon's skin. Yet still, two spears thrust fiercely into the demon's body, causing it to issue a piercing scream and forcing it to leap backward. They can actually push them back like this. Standing atop the high wall, Rocky watched the battle clearly, and as he saw the troops of Backhill Village using this method to repel the demons, his mouth fell slightly agape. So it can actually be done this way. Standing atop the high wall, Rocky watched as the Backhill Village troops not only successfully resisted the demons' onslaught, but also managed to repel them, and couldn't help but feel astonished. These troops accomplished this feat not with Lin Feng's help or by relying on strong equipment, but purely through the advantage of their formation. For Rocky, who had never been on a battlefield, this was simply inconceivable. In his mind, the formidable nature of demons was something ordinary people simply couldn't contend with, unless they were high-level warriors or soldiers clad in void magic armor. Otherwise, no one could match a demon, but today, this notion had been shattered. The troops' average level from Backhill Village wasn't high, mainly around second level, with few level 3 warriors, and their weapons and equipment were even more common. No, to be accurate, they were rudimentary. Their gear was even comparable to the earlier equipment of the Thunderhawk City Guard squad. Yet such a group had managed to defend against the demons' attack with the power of their formations and their excellent cooperation, even injuring the demons. Although they faced only one, achieving this was no small feat. This outcome filled Rocky with amazement. While Rocky was in awe, the battle outside the high walls continued. Lin Feng, entangled with a black-eyed demon one-on-one, showcased the prowess of a level 6 warrior in full splendor. To ordinary people, the demon, monstrous in their eyes, was utterly defenseless against him, only able to take hits. And if Lin Feng had wielded a mana weapon, the victor might have been decided much sooner than n/o/vel/b/and.c//om. On the other front, the other two demons that charged at the three formations also bit off more than they could chew. Despite their relentless onslaught against the formations, each charge was futile, and after each rush, they would end up with several bloody holes from the spears. The formation of the troops from Backhill Village was clearly aimed at countering the demons. The frontline soldiers had given up their weapons, but the large shields they held with both hands could effectively withstand the black-eyed demons' charges. Once they successfully resisted the assault, the soldiers in the rear would immediately thrust their spears forward. Perhaps not every jab would hit or injure a demon, but even if only one or two connected each time, the small amounts would accumulate, eventually killing the demons through attrition. Thus, the battle swiftly moved towards its conclusion. When the two demons, repeatedly charging at the formations, no longer had the strength to attack, the formations sprang into motion again. The three formations, like three moving walls, not only blocked the path of retreat, but also forced the two demons into continuous retreat. The soldiers in the front rank of the formations strode forward steadily. As soon as they closed in on the demons, the soldiers in the back rank would thrust out their spears. In this manner, while pushing forward tens of meters, the two demons finally collapsed powerlessly to the ground. Meanwhile, Lin Feng on the other side had also concluded his battle. He beheaded the black-eyed demon with a single sword strike and lifted the severed head high off the ground, joining the soldiers behind him in a victorious roar. In the deafening roar of triumph, the battle finally ended, with all three demons eliminated and no casualties among the Backhill Village troops. To be fair, the scale of the battle was not large. In fact, it was quite small, with only 100 Backhill Village troops and 3 demons. But it still excited Rocky, who had watched the entire battle from the high walls. However, he felt a twinge of nervousness amidst his excitement, for tomorrow it was his turn to lead the troops in defense. Black-eyed demons are nothing to be afraid of. Lilia's voice came at that moment, and when Rocky turned to her upon hearing her, he saw that Lilia was looking at him. If the troops from Backhill Village could withstand these demons, so can we, right? Our guards won't be any worse than them, Monty also said from the side. Encouraged by Lilia and Monty's words, Rocky nodded, and then the three of them descended from the high wall together. By this time, Lin Feng had already led his troops back, so the trio who came down from the high wall soon encountered them. Rocky had intended to step forward with congratulations, for despite the small significance, victory was still a victory. Unfortunately, before he could speak, Lin Feng, with a grave expression, took the initiative. Commander Rocky, something doesn't seem quite right. What's wrong? Lin Feng's words made Rocky furrow his brows in slight astonishment. The demons came too quickly this time. They shouldn't have come so soon. Even though they had just won against the demons, there was not a trace of joy on Lin Feng's face. Instead, he appeared deeply worried as he said, in normal circumstances, the first wave of the black-eyed would appear 2 to 3 days later. But this time, they came too quickly, and their numbers were greater. Greater numbers? Yes, previously the first wave of demons would be just 1, at most 2, but today 3 appeared. This indicates there will be even more demons appearing later. So, at this point, he glanced at Rocky. So it's possible that tomorrow we might face even more demons. Commander Rocky must be very cautious. I will also arrange for archers and mages to provide support from atop the high walls. Once Lin Feng had finished speaking, the look on Rocky's face turned sour, and his previous excitement and good mood vanished completely. He thought hard with his brows furrowed for a good while before speaking. Rest assured, Captain Lin Feng, I will be cautious. With those words, he returned to the camp with Lilia and Monty. For the rest of the day, the demons did not appear again. But because of the previous battle, it was clear that the demons had arrived. Therefore, neither the troops from Backhill Village nor people like Rocky dared to take it lightly, particularly at night. Lin Feng left half of his troops to keep watch on the high walls, fearing any unexpected incidents. However, the night passed by peacefully without any demon attacking. This was naturally good news for Backhill Village, but for Rocky, the opposite might be true, because it meant that the demons might launch their attack during the following day when it was his turn to guard. So when the next day came, and it was still dark, he got up early and began checking his void magic armor, making sure there would be no issues with the armor during combat. As dawn broke, Rocky took over the defense duties from Lin Feng, leading his own troops for the handover. When Rocky stepped onto the high walls, Lin Feng and his troops started their rest. But as the captain, Lin Feng gathered with a few of the squad leaders. They intended to discuss the defenses going forward, but as soon as the topic started, the conversation turned to Rocky. Captain, can we rely on these people? I doubt it. Their soldiers are too nervous. A clear sign they're greenhorns with no experience in big battles. Before Lin Feng could say a word, one squad leader beside him, who was roughly the same age and had commanded a phalanx in yesterday's battle, bluntly made that comment, showing his substantial standing among Lin Feng's subordinates. These soldiers from the Thunderhawk mercenary group are indeed average, but at least they have 10 floating warships, and that's enough, Lin Feng responded. Lin Feng wasn't too impressed with the Thunderhawk City Guard squad, but what he cared about the most were the 10 floating warships Rocky brought with him. So afterward he said, let's not worry about them. Think about what we're going to do next. The demons have come so suddenly. I'm afraid the events of half a year ago might repeat themselves. Half a year ago, Backhill Village's high walls were directly breached by a large number of demons, leading to heavy casualties in the village. At that time, Lin Feng wasn't commanding a force of 200, but a force of 700. And yet, despite that, the high walls were breached, with hundreds of black-eyed demons besieging them. Both his troops and the village walls were as fragile as paper. Lin Feng feared that the current situation might unfold just like it did half a year ago. Lin Feng and his troops were discussing something, but Rocky had no idea what it was, nor did he have the luxury of minding other people's business. At this moment, Rocky stood on the high walls of Backhill Village and had been standing there the entire morning. Having witnessed yesterday's battle with his own eyes, today's Rocky dared not take anything lightly, especially since according to Lin Feng's words, demons would start appearing endlessly from the moment the first batch emerged. So, barring any unforeseen circumstances, demons would attack today as well. How he wished for some accident to occur. Standing on the high wall, Rocky hoped more than once for some accident that would prevent the demons from coming. Although this thought might seem cowardly, it is a natural human sentiment, as nobody in their right mind would want to fight demons unless they were mad. However, his prayers went unanswered. What was destined to come, after all, arrived. As noon approached and Rocky, who had been on high alert all morning, was about to grab some food and rest, the bell on the tower suddenly rang out. The sudden tolling of the bell immediately tensed everyone's nerves. Rocky, who had just started eating, hurried to the edge of the high wall, and when he looked beyond it, he couldn't help but gasp. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As he cast his gaze beyond the high wall, he immediately spotted a group of figures. Not just one, but a whole crowd. These figures were, of course, the attacking demons, and in an instant, a total of 8 appeared. Oh heavens! Seeing the 8 demons outside the high wall, Rocky's heart sank to the bottom. Even though Lin Feng had cautioned him yesterday that the demons were coming too quickly this time, and that their numbers could be greater than before, the sight of 8 demons appearing before his eyes still made Rocky inhale sharply. But at that moment, he had no time for surprise. After seeing the number of demons, he immediately rushed down from the high wall. Everyone, prepare for battle. Descending from the high wall, Rocky arrived in front of the guard corps and shouted loudly. And by this time, the guards were already aware of the demons' arrival due to the bell and had readied themselves for battle under Monty's leadership. However, despite this, most of the guards within the guard corps couldn't hide their nervousness, especially after Rocky appeared. The expressions of the crowd were all taken in by Rocky, but unfortunately, with time pressing, he had no time to rally everyone again. So he could only shout, "Does everyone remember what I said before we set off?" "We remember." Before the mission, Rocky had told these guards that as their city lord, he would lead the charge in battle. As their city lord, he would become everyone's most loyal guardian. Recalling Rocky's words, the guards' performance improved significantly, and they then followed Rocky out over the high wall, led by Lilia. Once outside the high wall, Lilia, the overall commander, gave the order, "Everyone spread out by squads." At her command, the 100-strong guard corps instantly split into 10 squads, 10 people each, led by a squad leader, and then dispersed in front of the high wall. Fighting in squads was a tactic that Rocky, Lilia, and Monty had formulated the day before. After witnessing how Backhill Village's troops fought, Rocky sought Lilia and Monty's opinions. He wanted the guard corps to employ formations similar to Backhill Village's troops to combat the demons. Because even though Backhill Village had 200 troops, half of them were archers and mages, and the warriors confronting the demons head-on were only about 100 strong, exactly equal to the guard corps. This led Rocky to believe that if the other side could rely on that 2-row formation to combat the demons, then his guard corps should be able to as well. The ideas he had were immediately vetoed by Lilia and Monty. The guard corps of Thunderhawk City had never undergone such training and therefore couldn't possibly form formations. It's important to understand that formations aren't just for show. They require the soldiers to be in tacit harmony with each other. Such harmony can only come from long-term training and repeated battles, abilities that the guard corps currently lacked. However, after rejecting Rocky's suggestion, Lilia also put forward her own idea. She planned to divide the guard corps into small squads for combat. Compared to the troops from Backhill Village, Thunderhawk City's guard corps was inferior in terms of experience, quality, and training. Therefore, it was impossible to adopt the same combat methods as their counterparts. But the guard corps did have one advantage: equipment. Each of the 100 guards participating in the battle was equipped with 2 pieces of rune equipment. This was the greatest advantage of the guard corps. The defensive power provided by the 2 pieces of rune equipment was enough to elevate the strengths of the guard corps by a notch. By splitting the guards into small squads and using this method to divide the demons, they could create a local advantage where one squad would face one demon. This strategy would allow them to leverage their strengths and avoid their weaknesses. As long as there weren't too many demons, they would be able to fight back. It was because they were already prepared that, upon Lilia's command, the guards immediately divided into 10 squads under the leadership of their respective captains. What are they doing? At this moment, Lin Feng, who had heard the bell, also led the people from Backhill Village up to the high wall. Just like Rocky the day before, they looked down upon the battle below from their vantage point. But when they saw Lilia ordering her troops to split into 10 separate squads, someone immediately furrowed their brows. Captain, do these people even know how to fight? They dare to scatter themselves against the demons. Do they think that a small squad of 10 can hold off a demon? Clearly, to the people of Backhill Village, Lilia's tactics seemed like folly. Her idea might not have been wrong, but it was overly naive. While the dispersed formation could indeed create numerical advantage, one must not forget they were up against demons. Imagining that 10 people could hold off or kill a demon seemed like a joke. And if they failed to do so, the situation would quickly reverse, turning into a horrific scenario where the demons would defeat the small squads one by one. Therefore, the people of Backhill Village were entirely dismissive of Lilia's approach, considering it foolishness. Even Lin Feng frowned at this moment, and he promptly instructed those around him to have the archers and mages on the high walls ready for long-range support, while also preparing his own troops. From these arrangements, it was clear that Lin Feng was also doubtful about Rocky and his team's chances in the battle. However, even as these thoughts crossed their minds, Rocky and his companions were already in a state of serious readiness because, as they were dividing into squads, the approaching demons had already neared. Just like the previous day, the ones that appeared were still all black-eyed demons, and after emerging, they quickly closed in, reaching only a few dozen meters away in no time. Everyone, hold your positions and wait for the demons to charge. Lilia, who was leading a squad herself, held her runic shield and rune longsword in her hands. As she saw the demons getting closer, she ordered everyone to wait for the demons to rush in first. Her command was quickly relayed by the captains of each squad, ensuring that all guards remained stationary. But just as Lilia issued her order, the black-eyed demons made their move. The 8 black-eyed demons suddenly accelerated and charged toward the assembled warriors. Although there were only 8 demons, they must not be underestimated, for they were true monsters. Each of these formidable beasts stood over 2 meters tall. With each step, the ground would quake, and their charging speed was incredibly fast, so the impact and shock from just 8 demons mimicked the charge of an army of thousands. NOVL B/JNN. Faced with such a staggering charge, everyone on the battlefield was extremely tense, except for one person, Rocky. As the 8 black-eyed demons charged forward, Rocky, dressed in the void magic armor, lifted off the ground. Gradually ascending, he then suddenly sped up, shooting towards the demons like an arrow released from a bow. True to the words he spoke before he departed, as the city lord, he was to lead the charge in the battle against the demons. They both charged at each other at the same time, Rocky and the demon moving so fast that it only took a few blinks of an eye for the two to crash into each other fiercely. Like an arrow released from the string, Rocky collided head-on with the demon at the forefront. This wasn't just a figure of speech. He had literally slammed right into the demon. The tremendous force of the impact had flipped over the 2-meter-tall, black-eyed demon. Having flipped the demon over, Rocky didn't engage with it any further. Instead, he soared into the air, and once he was midair, he immediately dove down, targeting another demon. This demon was his actual target. The demon chosen by Rocky was over 2.5 meters tall, the largest and most ferocious of the 8 demons. With demons, the saying, "all bark, no bite," didn't apply. The bigger and more horrifying a demon looked, the more formidable it would be. And Rocky, wearing the void magic armor, naturally chose the most formidable demon as his target. He dove onto the largest black-eyed demon, and taking advantage of the momentum, Rocky swung his sword down in one fluid motion, striking the shoulder of the black-eyed demon. However, the demon's skin was too thick. Faced with a side sword that had been enhanced with runes, which was at least close to 2 stars in power, The sword came crashing down only to leave a small wound on the demon's shoulder. This strike didn't seriously injure the demon. Instead, it enraged the black-eyed demon, which let out a hoarse roar and immediately clawed at Rocky's chest, scratching him twice in an instant. If it had been an ordinary soldier who was clawed by the demon, they would have definitely died, but Rocky was wearing the void magic armor and had rune enhancement. So even though he was sent flying, he wasn't seriously injured. Taking advantage of the momentum, he soared into the air again and dived towards the giant demon. This commander is quite brave. Rocky, who was the first to engage the demon, naturally caught everyone's attention, especially the people from Backhill Village on the high wall. And as they watched Rocky battle with the biggest black-eyed demon, they internally gave him a thumbs up for his bravery. Yes, it's because he's wearing the void magic armor. As they watched Rocky and the demon fight time and again, the people around Linfeng felt somewhat envious. They were familiar with the reputation of the void magic armor, but unfortunately, Backhill Village couldn't afford such expensive equipment. So watching Rocky clad in the void magic armor fighting the demon made these people extremely envious. Stop the idle talk and get the archers and mages ready. While others were focused on Rocky, Linfeng had a serious expression. He didn't need to watch Rocky because there was no danger to him in the void magic armor. He was truly focused on the troops behind Rocky. While everyone was chatting, other demons had already charged toward the troops behind Rocky. These black-eyed demons seemed to have no brains, or maybe they just didn't understand the concept of teamwork. Yesterday, when Linfeng fought a demon one-on-one, the others charged at the troops, and today they did the same. While Rocky engaged the strongest black-eyed demon, the remaining 7 demons charged recklessly at the troops behind him. And only then did the real battle begin. Everyone stay calm. Follow the command. Leading her own small team at the very front, Lilia was shouting loudly while intently watching the demon closest to her team. This demon might not be as huge as the one tangled with Rocky, but it was still big, and from the direction it was coming from, it looked like it was targeting her team. As the demon drew nearer, Lilia raised her shield and ordered her team, shields up. At a command, the rest of the squad raised their shields and simultaneously activated the mana in both their shields and armor, enveloping the otherwise ordinary shields and armor in a halo of light. Just a few seconds after the guards raised their shields, the black-eyed demon charged forward and swept its claw without warning. There were 2 thudding sounds as the demon's sweeping attack hit 4 guards in succession, knocking 2 of them over with its immense force, while the other 2 were also pushed back several steps. But because they had all raised their shields in time, and more importantly, activated the mana in their shields and armor, they looked somewhat disheveled but did not sustain any real damage. Surrounded, ignoring the guards who had been knocked down and pushed back, after the black-eyed demon strike, Lilia immediately yelled out and led the rest to encircle the demon. The guards who had been knocked down and pushed back also got up and joined the encirclement. .n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Thus, Lilia led her squad and completely surrounded the demon. Others looked for an opportunity to attack. Having said that, Lilia rushed toward the encircled demon and leaped high in the air, slashing it with her sword, creating a foot-long gash across the chest of the black-eyed demon. Lilia's rune sword was even better than the side sword of the void magic armor. If evaluated by today's standards, this rune longsword would easily be considered a 3-star weapon. Even the tough hide of the black-eyed demon couldn't withstand such a slash, and blood immediately sprayed from the large gash across its chest. Chi. The severely injured black-eyed demon let out a scream and mindlessly swiped its claw at the nearest guard. There was a loud bang as the claw hit the guard, sending him flying several meters, but it did not kill him because his runic armor absorbed most of the force, allowing him to rise from the ground soon after and then rejoin the encirclement. Raise your shields. Raise all your shields. Raise shields. Activate the mana. Everyone stay orderly. While Lilia was leading her squad to encircle a demon and fight it fiercely, Calls for action and mana activation also continuously came from behind her, indicating that other squads were also engaging the demons in battle. Because everyone had begun fighting, nearly in an instant, the battlefield was filled with a blaze of light. This scene left everyone on the high wall dumbstruck. My goodness, how do they have such good equipment? Are these soldiers all wearing magic energy equipment? As they watched the guards activating their magic energy equipment, everyone from Backhill Village was gaping, their faces filled with disbelief. What's the deal with this Thunderhawk mercenary group? They even provided their soldiers with mana equipment. When Rocky led his guard corps into battle against the demons, Lin Feng and the others, who were closely watching the battle from atop the high walls, were completely dumbfounded, their faces filled with astonishment. Before this, they hadn't had high hopes for Rocky and his troops. In the eyes of those in Backhill Village who constantly fought against demons, Rocky's troops were nothing more than greenhorns. So much so that Lin Feng had already arranged for his own men to be ready to charge to their rescue at a moment's notice the instant Rocky's forces couldn't hold out. But to their greatest surprise, the troops led by Rocky were all outfitted in mana equipment, which made all their previous judgments meaningless. Take the current situation, for instance. Lin Feng and the others, with their commanding view from the high wall, could see every corner of the battlefield. In their eyes, the situation on the battlefield was utterly chaotic. At first glance, it seemed no different from a scattered mess. This wasn't surprising, as Lilia's tactics involved dividing the troops into small teams to isolate and pick off the demons one by one. Plainly spoken, the tactic was nothing more than a bunch of people ganging up on one demon. Naturally, the battlefield looked disorganized, even chaotic, unlike the ordered battle formations Lin Feng and the others were accustomed to. For this very reason, the people of Backhill Village weren't optimistic about the battle. They believed Rocky was bound to fail and might even crumble at the first blow. However, once the battle truly commenced, the expected outcome did not occur. Contrary to what Lin Feng and the others had imagined, when Rocky's troops began to divide and surround the demons in small team formations, not only did these small teams not crumble under the claws of the demons, but they also managed to pin down their respective demons. Such an outcome was, of course, thanks to the Guard Corps' mana equipment. If the quality of Thunderhawk City's Guard Corps was considered on its own, it was indeed quite average. Faced with the attacks of demons, most guards would be knocked back instantly, some even blasted away. But because they were wearing 2 pieces of mana equipment, even though these guards couldn't withstand the attacks, they also sustained no casualties. Those who were knocked back or flung away would simply get back up from the ground and rejoin the fight. Meanwhile, even though the overall quality of the Guard Corps wasn't top-notch, some individuals shone particularly bright. There was no need to mention Rocky, clad in his void magic armor. Besides him, the performances of Lilia and Monty also took the people of Backhill Village by surprise. Lilia on the battlefield was like a dazzling rose among a group of men, her presence as imposing as any. In terms of prowess and bravery, she was second to none, and she even took on a demon by herself with merely 3rd-level strength. And the reason Lilia could challenge a demon alone was, naturally, due to her full set of rune equipment, which made the people of Backhill Village envious. Of course, Lin Feng and the others did not know that Lilia was wearing rune equipment. They all thought it was a set of mana equipment, and they were incredibly envious. It was an entire set of mana equipment, after all. In terms of equipment quality, if Rocky's void magic armor was ranked first, then Lilia's set of mana equipment must be second. Therefore, from the beginning of the battle, Lilia became the center of everyone's attention, even more so than Rocky. After all, who wouldn't enjoy casting their eyes upon a beautiful woman shining brightly? Another focus of the crowd's attention was Monty. The people of Backhill Village felt conflicted about Monty. They recognized his strength, but let's not forget that Monty was missing a hand, making him, in their eyes, essentially disabled. That had led to plenty of behind-the-scenes talk. They really couldn't understand why Rocky would put a disabled person in charge of his team. But after the battle with the demons started, those with such thoughts, especially those who saw Monty as a disabled man, were all silenced because Monty was incredibly fierce on the battlefield. Being a beast man, Monty also stood well over 2 meters tall, a height comparable to that of the black-eyed demons, making it so their encounters resulted in a fight beyond ordinary people's imagination. The towering beast man faced the black-eyed demon without backing down, going head-to-head with brute force. In particular, his broadaxe, which was larger than a basin and etched with runes, combined with Monty's inherent strength as a 5th-level warrior, allowed him to knock the ferocious black-eyed demon flat in their first clash, completely befuddling it. Looks like we don't need to make a move. Assessing the situation of the battlefield, Lin Feng let out a sigh of relief and said with a smile to the people around him, who also nodded in agreement. Lin Feng's assessment was correct. At that moment, Rocky and the others were still engaged in fierce battle, but such fighting wouldn't last long. As soon as either Rocky, Monty, or Lilia managed to defeat the demon they were facing, the other teams would receive their support. That would significantly increase the speed at which demons were killed, and the battle would swiftly come to its concluding phase. In fact, Monty and Lilia had already overwhelmed their respective demons and would soon eliminate them. Under these circumstances, indeed, there was no need for Lin Feng and his group to provide support. Make way! Make way! Let me see. Step aside. Don't block the way. Just as Lin Feng eased up, convinced that the battle was well in hand, and he needn't lift a finger, a crisp voice suddenly emerged atop the high wall. A figure promptly pushed through the crowd and ran to the edge of the wall, peering excitedly down at the scene unfolding below. This person was naturally Dusa. Having hidden in Lilia's tent, Dusa had stayed inside all this time, so she was quite stifled these past few days. As soon as she heard the battle had begun, she couldn't contain her boredom any longer and dashed out. Dusa pushed through the crowd on the high wall and then looked toward the battlefield, immediately spotting her father. At that moment, Monty was locked in intense combat with the black-eyed demon, beating it back soundly. Seeing this, Dusa became ecstatic. She jumped up and down with joy and said to those around her, "Did you see that? That's my father. That's my father." After saying this, she couldn't contain her excitement and shouted toward the battlefield, "Dad, go for it! Go for it! Damn it!" Lin Feng immediately cursed inwardly, realizing too late that Dusa had the audacity to shout in such a way. Dusa's voice might have been ignored by others on the battlefield or not heard at all, but Monty did hear it. Monty, who was pressing the demon hard in battle, suddenly heard his daughter's voice. He looked back in surprise, quickly spotting Dusa on the wall gesturing towards him, a sight that left him utterly shocked. In that moment of astonishment, the black-eyed demon he had been beating back fiercely launched an attack and swept its claw towards Monty's head. Feeling the rush of wind, Monty, regaining his wits, dodged just in time to avoid a blow to the head, but his shoulder was struck hard by the demon's claw. Not only was he sent staggering backward, but his shoulder was also torn open, revealing flesh and blood. Simultaneously, Lilia also heard Dusa's voice, prompting her to glance unconsciously at the high wall and then towards Monty. She witnessed the very moment Monty was hit, but was blindsided by an immense object charging at her. Lilia didn't even grasp what was happening before being sent tumbling away. In an instant, just an instant, the formerly orderly battlefield descended into chaos. Captain, Instructor. Monty and Lilia had been knocked down by demons one after another, causing their squads to fall into disarray in an instant, and this chaos undoubtedly gave demons the chance to break through the encirclement in a blink of an eye. The two squads, which had originally been the most promising to kill the demons first, had their ranks scattered first at that moment. At this time, the other squads also noticed the situation here, and when the guards saw that the squads led by Lilia and Monty were scattered, and that Lilia and Monty were knocked down, the biggest weakness of the new soldiers was exposed. The Guard Corps of Thunderhawk City had never seen the battlefield. Hence, regardless of age, all guards were new soldiers, and one of the most fatal flaws of new soldiers is the inability to fight a battle against the odds. The reason the guards had been able to hold back the demons on the battlefield was firstly because Rocky, the city lord, charging at the front had greatly boosted morale, making everyone feel high-spirited. Secondly, it was because Rocky, Lilia, and Monty were the backbone of the guards, and everyone felt that as long as the three of them were there, the battle could surely be won. This thought might have been somewhat naive, but it was the basic motivation that kept everyone willing to confront the demons. And when the actual battle started, the situation indeed matched everyone's expectations. Rocky, Lilia, or Monty all fought with extraordinary bravery. The demons, which seemed like monsters to others, were completely suppressed by the trio, further inspiring the guards' morale and letting everyone hold their ground no matter what under the attack of the demons. But now, due to Dus's appearance, Monty and Lilia had both faced accidents consecutively, and two of the three backbones had fallen in an instant, which was a huge blow to the guards' psyches. The squads they led were the first to fall into chaos, and this chaos quickly spread to the other squads, throwing the entire situation into disarray. Although there is a reason for this, and although the down Monty and Lilia actually stood up again very quickly, don't forget that this is a battlefield, and most people do not know what exactly has happened. Everyone only knows that both backbone figures like Monty and Lilia had been struck down by demons, and the previously soaring morale suddenly plummeted. This is the most common problem with new soldiers on the battlefield. Due to a lack of experience, they cannot judge the situation on their own, coupled with a lack of mental fortitude, often resulting in extreme displays of either excessive morale or complete despondency. The guards of Thunderhawk City are now in such a state, and when morale plummeted, the guards fell completely into chaos. And as chaos broke out, the situation on the battlefield also changed immediately. The demons, which had been tightly encircled, started slaughtering in all directions as soon as the guards began to panic, and in the wake of the demons' willful rampage, the solid encirclement was breached, and as soon as the circle was broken, casualties followed. Guards were injured by the claws of demons for failing to dodge in time, and some even fell never to rise again. Don't panic. Hold your ground. Captain Lilia is fine. Everybody don't panic. Stay calm. Instructor Monty is fine. Don't let the chaos get to you. As chaos began to spread on the battlefield, the captains of each squad still tried to remain calm, doing their utmost to stabilize others. But it had no effect, and the chaos continued unabated. Almost in an instant, the tide of the battle had completely turned. How? How could this happen? The battlefield became chaotic in an instant, leaving the previously elated Dusa stunned, the naive girl having no idea what had happened. Everything was fine just moments ago, so how did it all change so suddenly? Someone, get her out of here! At that moment, Lin Feng also furrowed his brows deeply. At his command, the dazed Dusa was hurriedly sent down the tall wall, and then he quickly turned his attention to the battlefield. Actually, based on Dusa's behavior just now, Lin Feng had already figured out her identity, and with his experience, he could tell from Monty's surprised expression the ins and outs of the situation. This also filled him with a profound sense of helplessness. Since ancient times, there has been a rule that soldiers going off to war can't bring their wives and children. Why can't soldiers take their wives and children into battle? Just look at Monty's behavior just now, and you will understand. Once soldiers are on the battlefield facing the enemy, if their hearts are still tied to their loved ones at home, they will become deserters if they don't die in battle. Deuce's appearance was clearly a violation of this taboo. N/O/vel/B//, and .C//OM. However, it was too late to say anything now. Although Dusa had been driven down from the tall wall, the battlefield was already in chaos, and a trend of defeat had become apparent. Lin Feng immediately gave the order for the Backhill village troops to prepare to strike. He wanted to lead the charge and support them. But just at this moment, as the Guard Corps of Thunderhawk City had already become hopelessly disorganized, and the trend of defeat was inevitable, Lin Feng was just about to lead the Backhill village troops to support them when a miserable wail that pierced the entire sky suddenly came. SSSHH, SSSHH, SSSHH. SSSHH, SSSHH. The wailing was ear-piercingly loud, so tragic that it made one's blood run cold. It not only rang through the entire sky, but also reached the ears of everyone as soon as it appeared. People on the battlefield heard it. Those on the tall walls heard it. Even the villagers of Back Hill Village heard it. This terrible wailing made everyone, whether on the battlefield, on the high walls, or the demons wreaking havoc everywhere, look in one direction at the same moment: the source of the sound. In fact, the source of the wailing was not far from everyone. It was at the edge of the battlefield, exactly where Rocky was. Due to the previously rapid change in the situation, many people had overlooked Rocky's presence and had even forgotten him. But when they paid attention to him once more, they were met with an incredibly shocking scene. At this very moment, Rocky, with his long sword in hand, was stabbing towards the black-eyed demon. He thrust his sword fiercely into the demon's chest, then out its back, impaling the massive black-eyed demon clear through. The black-eyed demon, pierced through the chest by the sword, kept wailing mournfully. The sound was eerie, and with a resentful flailing of its claws, it seemed as though it wanted to drag Rocky down with it to death. But it had no chance for that, as after impaling it with his sword, Rocky pressed down on the hilt with both hands and with a swift slash, split the black-eyed demon open from its chest. My God! What did he just do? This bloody scene left everyone stunned, and some even felt a wave of nausea churning in their stomachs. After cleaving the demon in two, Rocky slowly turned around, holding his blood-drenched sword as he looked back over the battlefield. At that moment, he seemed like a god of slaughter himself, not only shocking everyone present, but also stunning the remaining demons. Seeing the battlefield in utter disarray, Rocky didn't hesitate as he leaped into the air and then flew towards the center of the combat zone. The cornerstone of the Guard Corps had finally arrived. When Rocky parachuted onto the battlefield, the guards and demons hadn't even snapped out of the shock from the previous moment. And it wasn't Rocky who finally brought everyone back to their senses, but another scream. Rocky, who had parachuted into the fray, targeted a dazed demon and, after knocking it down with a sword, he slashed at the demon 3 times with his long sword, drawing continuous screams from the creature. However, it must be admitted that demons are truly monstrous in nature. Even after being sliced by Rocky 3 times in a row, this demon still didn't die until Rocky used all his strength to deliver a 4th blow, finally severing the demon's head. With the beheading of the demon, everyone on the battlefield finally snapped back to reality. The Guard Corps, now reinvigorated, were completely different from before. Just moments ago on the verge of collapse, they now surged with morale, changing the dynamics of the battlefield once again. The chaotic battlefield seemed to stabilize instantly. With the direction of various squad leaders, the guards once again surrounded the demons completely, and all the previous chaos seemed as if it had never occurred, aside from the dead demons and injured guards. At this point, it's worth mentioning the leaders assigned by Lilia to the squads. These were truly the elite of the Guard Corps. When all the guards were in disarray, leaders like Sandro didn't lose their footing. They still tried to control the situation, and although they had little effect, their efforts were undoubtedly commendable. Indeed, it was thanks to them that, with Rocky joining the fray, the guards quickly encircled the demons again. Monty and Lilia also took this opportunity to recover and join Rocky in a counterattack. The situation, which was on the verge of collapse, turned around just like that, and the catalyst for this change was clearly Rocky. Killing the demon he was entangled with was a very common occurrence for Rocky, so common that no one bothered to pay attention. However, the timing of his kill was critical. The moment he killed the demon coincided precisely with the Guard Corps' descent into chaos and the brink of defeat. This timing was pivotal, and combined with his god of slaughter-like descent onto the battlefield and swift elimination of a demon, he steadied the hearts of the bewildered guards, allowing them to regain their pillar of support. Rocky was that pillar of support for the guards. In their eyes, Rocky's status was irreplaceable. He was not only the city lord in their hearts, but also the mightiest warrior they looked up to. Interestingly, after Rocky joined the fight, not only did the morale of the guards swell because of his presence, but even the demons were affected. Perhaps it was because he had killed their boss. The surrounded demons no longer displayed the same arrogance. When Rocky set his sights on them, these demons actually began to wail mournfully, and their pitch-black eyes revealed fear. Given this, the outcome of the subsequent battle was self-evident. Rocky, Lilia, and Monty began picking off the surrounded demons one by one. The demons were quickly laid out on the ground, and in no time, all were slain. "We won! We won! We won! We won! Ha! We won! We won!" When the last demon was pinned under Rocky's foot, and his long sword pierced its head, it wasn't clear which guard started the victorious chant, but soon that cry connected into a chorus, becoming waves of cheers. Amidst the cheering, Rocky pulled his sword out of the demon's skull and turned to face the incessant cheers of the guards. As he slowly turned around, the cheering of the guards came to a sudden halt. Everyone was looking at him, watching as Rocky slowly raised his long sword, watching as a smile spread across his face streaked with demon blood. "We won!" Facing his own guard corps, Rocky raised his blood-drenched sword high and declared victory. As he finished his statement, the guards all lifted their weapons, erupting into even louder cheers. They had won! "You're not hurt, are you?" In the midst of deafening cheers, Lilia approached Rocky, eyeing his bloody figure, and asked with concern, "No, it's all demon blood." While shaking his head, Rocky reached out to wipe the blood off Lilia's cheek, causing her to blush, but he promptly said, "Take the injured into the village immediately and see to Monty. Dress his wounds as quickly as possible." The recent chaos had left many among the guard corps wounded, especially Monty, whose injuries were severe. Without wasting time on further conversation with Lilia, Rocky sent her to tend to the wounded, then called over Sandro. "Sai, Commander." Seeing Rocky wave for him, Sandro quickly ran to his side with a face full of joy. It was unclear whether his happiness derived from their recent victory or from Rocky calling out to him. "Sandro, take some men and carry the demons' bodies into the village," Rocky ordered. "Freeze them with ice magic. These are our spoils of war. Understood?" "Yes, my lord. Rest assured," Sandro responded. With his agreement, Sandro ran into the cheering crowd and called several guards to start cleaning up the battlefield. Although the battle had been fierce and they had ultimately won, Rocky hadn't let success cloud his judgment. He still remembered to seize their rightful spoils of war, the bodies of 8 demons, which, even if some were damaged, could be sold for a substantial sum of money. Once everything was taken care of, he led his people back to Backhill Village. As they passed through the tall gates, the victorious Rocky and his troops were greeted by Lin Feng and others, who had been waiting for some time. "Commander Rocky, that was a splendid victory." Approaching Rocky with large strides, Lin Feng couldn't help but say. His words were no flattery. The battle had indeed been thrilling. The situation on the battlefield had shifted several times, keeping Lin Feng on edge as he watched, but in the end, Rocky and his men won, and won handsomely, with minimal casualties. "Thank you, Captain Lin Feng. Please make sure that our wounded are well cared for by the villagers," Rocky replied. "Don't worry, the injured will be taken care of by the villagers," Lin Feng assured him. The two had already discussed the matter of the wounded, with Backhill Village villagers being responsible for them, so Lin Feng simply nodded in agreement. After that, Rocky didn't chat much with Lin Feng and immediately began preparing for the next battle. Although they had achieved victory, the day wasn't over. What if more demons came? Rocky had to be vigilant. And so, Rocky and the Guard Corps, rather than resting immediately after their victory, continued to remain on alert in case of another demon attack, all the way until the night. Once Rocky had arranged for the night watch, everyone could finally rest. Even so, Rocky didn't rest. He went straight away to check on the wounded. Although no one had died in the recent battle, many had been injured, 9 guards in total. Naturally, Rocky wanted to check on them, and after seeing to everyone else, he brought Lilia to Monty's tent. Among all the injured, Monty's condition was the most severe. Upon entering the tent, Rocky saw Monty with thick bandages around his shoulder. "Monty, rest and recover in peace. Lilia and I will take care of the upcoming battles," Rocky assured him. Rocky was naturally most concerned about Monty's injuries and urged him to heal without worry. However, Monty's reply had nothing to do with the troops, with Rocky. or with anyone else. City Lord, how is Dusa doing? He asked. Taken aback by Monty's question, Rocky didn't know how to answer and simply looked at Lilia, who, understanding the situation, stepped out of the tent. When she returned, Dusa was with her. Dusa at that moment seemed like a completely different person. The vibrant young girl now appeared wilted, especially her swollen eyes. It was clear she had been crying for a long time. Father, I was wrong, she said tremblingly, approaching Monty's bedside and unable to stop her tears from flowing. Rocky and Lilia had guessed that Monty would probably roar in anger at this point, especially since Dusa had indeed caused a big problem this time, that n/o/vel/b//and.c//om. Unexpectedly, rather than erupting in anger, Monty just looked at his daughter and sighed, turning his gaze toward Rocky. City Lord, Dusa has caused serious trouble. Don't hesitate to punish or discipline her as needed. But, he said, please let me bear the burden in her stead. This. Rocky was initially taken aback and then sighed helplessly, as the situation was indeed a difficult one to handle. Monty's words put Rocky in a difficult position. This time, Dusa had indeed caused a huge disaster. If it weren't for her, the Guard Corps of Thunderhawk City should have won the previous battle in a splendid fashion, and there would have even been no casualties. But it was because of Dusa that the battle nearly ended in failure, and many guards were injured as a result. Facing such serious consequences, it wouldn't be excessive to charge Dusa with the crime of disrupting the military's morale, and punishment was certain, because not punishing her would not suffice to steady the military's heart. But what made Rocky feel troubled was that although Dusa was at fault, she had no malicious intent. She caused this disaster simply out of ignorance, so the principle, the ignorant are not guilty, could apply to her. Secondly, the main reason for the Guard Corps' chaos was actually Monty and Lilia, so the blame couldn't be entirely placed on Dusa. They both bore responsibility too. And the final point was that Dusa was Monty's daughter. To treat Monty, Rocky naturally couldn't act the same as he would with others. After all, Monty was his valued aide. How could he bear to punish Dusa in such a situation? Thus, Rocky did indeed find the situation difficult. The guards in the Guard Corps were already injured because of this matter. If he let it slide without any resolution, the guards would likely become discontented. But if he were to actually punish Dusa, Rocky couldn't bear to do it. According to the laws of Thunderhawk City, Dusa had to be whipped for committing such a mistake. City Lord, this was Dusa's mistake. The brothers in the Guard Corps almost died on the battlefield because of her, so we must give everyone an explanation, Monty said, having noticed Rocky's hesitance. You don't have to hesitate. Do what needs to be done. I will bear all the consequences. Seeing Rocky undecided, Monty spoke up again. He knew Rocky was in a dilemma, but Monty was even clearer that they had to give the Guard Corps an explanation, or there would surely be guards who harbored ill feelings. Such discontent would be very detrimental to both him and Rocky. How about this? Let's just make a note of this incident for now. Once the mission is complete and we return to Thunderhawk City, we will make a decision then, Lilia suggested from the side, offering a provisional solution. That won't do. Such matters cannot be delayed. Monty immediately replied, even before Rocky could agree or not. The battle has just begun, and now is the time when unity is most needed. If we don't deal with this matter, we won't be able to fight in future battles. Monty's words hit the nail on the head. The fight had just started, and it was unknown how many more battles would follow. This was precisely the time to unite everyone's hearts and make them cooperate. If the Guard Corps started harboring resentment now, it could indeed lead to big trouble. City Lord, as Rocky was torn, Dusa, who had been silent with her head down since entering the tent, suddenly spoke up. She looked at Rocky with her eyes still wet from tears and said while biting her lip, City Lord, Father is right. I caused a major disaster and should be punished. Please do not show mercy on my account. But please promise me one thing, Dusa continued, glancing at Monty before turning back to Rocky. I can bear the consequences of the disaster I caused. My father doesn't have to bear them for me. Upon hearing Dusa speak so bravely, Rocky was taken aback. He hadn't expected the girl like Dusa to have such courage, especially because if she were punished, she would be whipped. Monty, too, was surprised by his daughter's words, but then showed a proud smile. This was his daughter. All right. With that, Rocky could only nod. Then he patted Dus on the head. Young lady, you've grown up. After saying that, he left Dusa in Monty's tent. Now that everyone knew Dusa had come, there was no need for her to hide anymore. It was best for her to stay and take care of Monty. Immediately afterward, Rocky left with Lilia. And after Rocky and Lilia had left, Dusa sat beside Monty's bed and, after a long while, still biting her lip, she asked, "Father, does the whipping hurt?" "It hurts," Monty replied after looking at his daughter. "But you have to be strong." The night passed without words, and in the blink of an eye, it was the next day. Early in the morning, after completing the handover with Lin Feng, Rocky led the Guard Corps back to camp, but did not immediately dismiss the troops. To everyone's confusion, upon entering the camp, they saw Monty, bandaged up, standing with Dusa beside him. Rocky stopped the troops and stood before all of them. "In yesterday's battle, all of you performed extremely well," Rocky said loudly to the guards. "Your bravery made the demons tremble, and your strength shocked the demons. I am proud of you." Rocky's words came straight from the heart because yesterday's victory had indeed filled him with pride. The guards, hearing this, puffed out their chests, feeling proud of themselves as well. But then, Rocky's tone suddenly changed, his expression turning serious. However, yesterday, some made a fatal mistake. This mistake caused many brothers to be injured, and it nearly resulted in our downfall. I will not tolerate such incidents. With that, Rocky waved his hand, and Monty brought Dusa forward. "Monty, you are everyone's instructor, and Dusa is your daughter. Tell us, how should this be dealt with?" After glancing at Monty, then at Dusa, Rocky asked in a cold tone. "My lord, Dusa attempted to disrupt the army's morale during wartime and should be subjected to the whip." "How many lashes?" "6 lashes." Standing straight in front of Rocky, Monty said loudly. As soon as he spoke, the guards all drew in a sharp breath. 6 lashes. Dusa was just a girl. How could she endure such severe punishment? Under these circumstances, someone from the Guard Corps immediately shouted, "My lord, please spare Dusa. She didn't do it on purpose." "Yeah, my lord, please let little Dusa go. Please show mercy, my lord." NOVLB //JNN. Over 2 months of grueling training had forged a bond between the guards and their instructor Monty. Since Dusa often appeared during the training sessions, everyone was not only familiar with her, but had also grown fond of the little girl, who was always hopping and bouncing around. Therefore, upon hearing that Dusa was to be whipped, the guards immediately cried out loudly for clemency on her behalf. However, in response to the pleadings of the crowd, Rocky simply waved his hand and then turned to look at Monty. "Monty, what do you think?" "My lord, please enforce the law impartially." Monty replied without hesitation. "Very well." Rocky nodded at this response, which caused a pang in the hearts of the watching guards. But then Rocky spoke. "The mistake that Dusa has committed cannot be taken lightly, but considering that it was an unintentional fault, and she is not a member of the Guard Corps, therefore, let the punishment be halved." After saying this, Rocky glanced at Dusa, and she, somewhat timid but also resilient, nodded her head and stepped toward a large wooden stake in the camp. The stake had been erected by Lilia early that morning, specifically for the execution of Dusa's whipping. So when Dusa approached the stake and embraced it, Lilia, who had been waiting nearby with a whip in hand, handed her a small wooden stick. "Bite down on this." As Dusa bit down on the wooden stick, Lilia tied her securely to the stake and whispered softly, "Endure it, it will be over soon." Thus, it wasn't long before Dusa was bound to the stake, after which Lilia retreated to a distance. "Carry out the punishment." At Rocky's command, Lilia, standing behind Dusa, swung the whip, and with a loud crack, the lash struck Dusa's back. The strike tore a bloody gash across Dusa's back, prompting many in the Guard Corps to turn away, unable to bear such a cruel sight. Even Rocky, at that moment, instinctively turned his head away. Rocky was quite fond of Dusa, and since she was close with Lilia, he often saw the vivacious little girl bouncing around at the city lord's mansion. He would not have allowed her this suffering if it weren't absolutely necessary, if not for the exigencies of the situation. As for Dusa herself, after that first lash, she let out a whimpering cry, and tears streamed down her face. But the person who felt the most pain wasn't Dusa. In fact, it was Monty, as her father, who could feel more heartache than him. But as Monty had said the night before, Dusa had committed a serious error at a critical moment, and this was the punishment she had to endure, lest it leave behind a grave hazard. While everyone felt sorrow for Dusa, another crack sounded as Lilia delivered the second and then the third lash. After 3 consecutive lashes, the execution was complete. Although the procedure was very brief, it felt longer than a whole day to those present. After delivering the third lash with her own hands, Lilia rushed to the stake to untie Dusa, only to find the girl had passed out. In that situation, Lilia quickly took Dusa for treatment, and an anxious Monty followed at Rocky's gesture. Only after they had departed did Rocky turn his gaze back to those assembled. "I want everyone to remember what happened here." Rocky's expression was stern as he addressed the crowd, his tone serious and his demeanor solemn. "Here with me, no matter who you are, rewards come with achievement, and mistakes carry penalties. Do you understand?" "Understood." Standing straight before him, the guards of the Guard Corps shouted in unison. The flogging Dusa endured was not only heart-wrenching, but also made the guards understand the true meaning of the saying, "Law enforcement is as immovable as mountains." This was precisely why Monty insisted that Rocky punish Dusa, because through this flogging, not only would the Guard Corps hold no grudges against Dusa and Monty, since the whip had already been cracked, but they would also develop a sense of fear, a fear that stemmed not from any person, but from military law itself. This was the most critical matter. Once military law and military might were established, it would be infinitely beneficial for the entire Guard Corps to N/O/V/B//and.C///OM. At the same time, Rocky's actions were also observed by the people of Back Hill Village and in no time had reached Lin Feng's ears. Upon learning of this on the high wall, Lin Feng was first stunned, then smiled and nodded. "Commander, this Rocky is really ruthless, showing no mercy at all," someone said. "Yes, he's too cruel," another agreed. The residents of Back Hill Village were well aware of Dusa's situation, as they all had been present the day before, so when they learnt that Rocky had dealt with the matter so promptly and had punished Dusa so severely, they all sighed. "This Commander Rocky does have some guts. It seems we underestimated this mercenary group before," commented someone. After nodding with a smile, Lin Feng also spoke. As the leader of his own unit, Lin Feng naturally understood why Rocky had dealt with Dusa's situation so swiftly, and although it wasn't of much concern to him, Lin Feng was, after all, collaborating with Rocky to combat the demons. Calling them allies was by no means inappropriate. In such a scenario, if Rocky could manage his own unit well, it would be advantageous and harmless for Lin Feng. "Ensure that the village's doctor takes good care of the wounded from the Thunderhawk mercenary group. They should not be neglected," he commanded. After giving the instruction, Lin Feng put the matter aside and turned his gaze towards the exterior of the high wall. Although he appeared no different than usual, he was very tense inside, perhaps even more so than Rocky. With years of experience combating demons, Lin Feng had detected that there was something different about the demons attacking Back Hill Village this time, with the greatest difference being in their numbers. The demons attacking Back Hill Village this time were too numerous. This statement might seem a bit off, as, upon careful consideration, the demons attacking Back Hill Village totaled only 11 and had attacked over the span of 2 days, which didn't seem excessive. In reality, it was the opposite, given that the mining in Back Hill Village would continue for an entire month. During this time, more demons would be continually attracted, and their numbers would gradually increase. This meant that within this month, the number of demons attacking Back Hill Village would consistently rise. This was precisely why Lin Feng was worried. If the second wave of demons amounted to 8, then what about the third? How many would appear in the third wave, and would it exceed 10? As for the fourth and fifth waves, how many demons would there be? One must know that demons were not only individually powerful, but also numerous in number. The appearance of a swarm of demons would inevitably lead to a disaster. So while the initial two waves of demonic assaults had been repelled, this did nothing to alleviate Lin Feng's concerns. After all, the number of demons in the previous two encounters had been below 10, which was still manageable. But when their numbers reached double digits, the battle would move to another level entirely. This was what worried Lin Feng and the cause of his nervousness. He had encountered a similar situation 6 months earlier. Back then, Backhill Village was much stronger than it was now, but it nevertheless fell to the greatly numbered demons. Whether they were his soldiers or the villagers of Backhill, there had been heavy casualties. Therefore, Lin Feng truly did not wish for a repeat of the scenes from 6 months ago. Everyone, stay sharp. With these thoughts in his mind, he couldn't help but shout at everyone on the wall, leaving them bewildered. Meanwhile, after carrying out the flogging and assigning Monty to take care of Dusa, Rocky summoned Lilia, Sandro, Robin, and the other squad leaders to his tent. Although they had won the battle the day before, it also exposed many issues, such as the Guard Corps falling into disarray at a critical moment. If it weren't for Rocky's decisive action, the outcome might have been completely different. The blame for this incident was ultimately placed on Dusa, but that was just on the surface. The real issue lay within the Guard Corps itself. If their discipline had been stronger, if the Guards' mental fortitude had been higher, perhaps the chaos that ensued would not have occurred. It was normal for there to be problems during the Guard Corps' first actual combat, but this was no excuse to ignore the issues. Thus, while the other guards were resting, Rocky had called the squad leaders to his tent to hold a meeting, or rather a post-battle summary, to discuss the lessons learned. But as everyone sat down in the tent, and before Rocky had a chance to speak, Lilia couldn't hold back any longer. Standing in front of the squad leaders with a solemn expression, she asked, "Do you think that the reason the previous battle went so poorly was all because of Dusa? This? Perhaps because of the recent flogging, Lilia was in a bad mood, and her ominous expression looked particularly intimidating. Faced with her dour countenance, the squad leaders in the tent looked at each other, and then all lowered their heads, with none daring to answer. Seeing no one respond, Lilia singled someone out. "Aga, you speak?" The man named by her, Aga, was a middle-aged man, already 35 years old this year. Among the Guard Corps, he was the oldest and the most mature and steady. Hence, Lilia had appointed him as the leader of a small squad. However, after being named by her, Aga looked at her and awkwardly grinned. "Sandra, what do you think?" Seeing that Aga didn't open his mouth, Lilia turned her spearhead toward Sandro, but just like before, Sandro, whose name was called, also hung his head. "Why aren't any of you speaking?" When no one opened their mouths, Lilia snorted coldly and then said, "That's right, having a young girl take responsibility for you. You really don't have much to say." Giving a cold look at the crowd, Lilia was ruthless, immediately rendering a whole bunch of grown men blushing intensely. "You all should be well aware that the mess in the previous battle wasn't Dusa's fault, but because you didn't do what you were supposed to. Commander, we did our best, but when we saw both you and the instructor were taken down, the brothers really panicked at that moment." After being severely scolded by Lilia, a squad leader next to Sandro said with a sense of grievance. His words were not wrong, because though the guards were in chaos, these squad leaders attending hadn't descended in a panic alongside them. They were all trying their best to control the situation. "You dare to argue?" As a result, the words of the squad leader directly inflamed Lilia. She glared with round eyes and said annoyedly, "When the people in your squad panic, isn't that exactly when they need you? Otherwise, why would I appoint you as squad leaders?" After this remark, no squad leader dared to retort, for Lilia was absolutely right. They indeed hadn't managed the members of their squads well during that time. So, the scene fell silent, until after quite some time had passed, Sandro, who had remained silent all along, suddenly stood up from his seat. "Commander, it is indeed our dereliction of duty." Looking at Lilia, Sandro's expression was resolute, and then he turned to Rocky. "City Lord, as squad leaders, We failed to fulfill our responsibilities. Please punish us as you see fit, City Lord. After finishing his speech, Sandro stood up straight before Rocky, and at the same time, the other squad leaders around him also stood up. They seemed to be waiting for Rocky's reprimand, just like him. But how could Rocky continue to scold them? Lilia had already done all the scolding previously, so he then said, "Sit down, all of you." After Sandro and the others had resumed their seats, Rocky began to speak. What Lilia just said wasn't wrong. As squad leaders, you indeed didn't organize your guards well, but there's a reason for this. However, remember, for any military unit, discipline is the most important thing. Without discipline, even the strongest forces are no more than a scattered mob. As leaders, it is your responsibility to ensure on the battlefield that your squad is not thrown into disarray. You may not be able to do this now, but you can't forever be unable to do so. If that's the case, then I will have to find replacements. Understood? Understood. Good, now let's talk about your feelings. Facing demons for the first time, engaging in direct confrontation with demons for the first time, how do you all feel? After making a summary speech, Rocky began to let everyone share their feelings about confronting the demons. This was also one of the reasons he had gathered them, to collectively exchange and sum up experiences so that they could perform better in future battles. Time passed like this for quite a while. When the squad leaders came out of Rocky's tent, the sky had already turned dark. They had actually talked for an entire day inside the tent. Strange. Observing the dark sky, Sandro, who walked out of the tent, couldn't help but frown, then turned to Aga beside him. "Big brother Aga, did you hear the bell?" "The bell? I didn't hear it." Aga shook his head, indicating he hadn't heard the bell that signaled the attack of demons. "It's already dark?" At that moment, Rocky and Lilia also exited the tent, and they too were stunned to discover the night had fallen. Then they looked at each other. "The demons didn't come today?" Both reacted quickly. Seeing that it was dark, they knew that throughout the whole day, the demons hadn't launched an attack. However, this didn't bring them the slightest joy, but instead made their expressions change. "Let's go have a look." After these words, Rocky rushed towards the high walls. The demons not attacking for an entire day was too abnormal. The demons didn't attack all day? This situation was so abnormal that it made Rocky immediately ascend the high wall. Upon reaching the top, he quickly spotted Lin Feng, who had been on guard there all day. "Captain Lin Feng, no demons appeared today?" "Yes, none." Obviously, the quiet day had also left Lin Feng feeling uneasy. He frowned and glanced at Rocky. "No, not even a shadow of a demon all day. Is this a good thing or a bad thing?" As someone new to Backhill Village, Rocky wasn't sure if this was normal or an anomaly, so he could only ask Lin Feng. But Lin Feng's next response made his heart tighten. "This has never happened before." Turning to him, Lin Feng said with concern, "Normally, as soon as the village starts mining, demons begin appearing one after the other. From the first demon, the attacks continue non-stop until the mining ends, and sometimes even longer. So I've never encountered this before." After saying this, Lin Feng sighed, and it took him a while to muster a smile. "But you don't need to worry. Maybe the demons will show up tonight, it's quite common." Although demons previously appeared without interruption, they did not necessarily attack only during the day. Sometimes, they started their assaults at night. "All right, I'll have the troops ready at all times. If you need support, send someone to notify us immediately." Since Lin Feng had said so, Rocky could only nod, tell him that he would keep the troops ready to assist at any moment, and then he left. Upon returning to camp, Rocky had no choice but to summon all the squad leaders, telling them to keep the guards alert at night in case the demons attacked. Once he had arranged everything, he finally managed to return to his own tent. After the battle yesterday and discussions with the various squad leaders all day, Rocky was completely exhausted. No sooner had he lain down on his bed than his eyelids began to droop. However, he couldn't allow himself to fall asleep. He was worried something might happen during the night. Even though Lin Feng said the demons were likely to attack at night, Rocky was still very uneasy. After all, what if the demons didn't attack during the night? Wouldn't that mean when it was his turn to defend tomorrow, A bunch of demons would suddenly appear? If that were the case, it would be terrible because Rocky knew that a major reason they had won yesterday's battle was due to good luck, and because the number of demons wasn't particularly high, staying in the single digits. If it were his turn to defend tomorrow and more than 10 demons appeared all at once, that would be troublesome, something Rocky had to consider seriously. As he thought about it, he fell asleep. There was no helping it. Rocky was just too tired. Not only had the battle taken a heavy toll on his body, but the myriad concerns had also drained him mentally. Thus, once he lay on his bed, he fell asleep and slept soundly until dawn. After a solid night's sleep, Rocky awoke and immediately cursed himself for his uselessness, rushing out of the tent. There, he saw the already prepared guard corps, everyone waiting for him. Lilia, how was last night? Did the demons come? While leading the guard corps towards the high wall to relieve Lin Feng, Rocky inquired about Lilia's situation last night. But to his question, Lilia shook her head with a troubled expression. Last night? Nothing happened. N/O/vel/b/and.c//om. Such an answer immediately furrowed Rocky's brows, because if the demons hadn't appeared yesterday, they were definitely going to appear today. This was troublesome, as the guard corps had just battled the day before yesterday. Although they had rested for a day and were in better condition, continuing the fight with the demons might still be too much for them. Moreover, the injured from the last battle had not yet recovered, leading to an incomplete roster in the guard corps. A few missing regular guards could be overlooked, but the absence of Monty, a key member, undoubtedly weakened Rocky's side significantly. More importantly, since the demons didn't show up yesterday, the number appearing today would definitely be especially high, easily exceeding 10, and possibly even more. This made Rocky very worried about whether he and the guard corps could hold the high wall. It seemed very likely that they would need the support of Lin Feng's team today. Worried sick, Rocky and Lilia climbed up to the high wall and began their day-long duty of defense. An entire day went by consumed with his worries. Yes, an entire day passed peacefully, and the demons still did not appear. When evening came, Rocky, worried that the demons might appear at night, didn't let the guard corps return to the camp to sleep, but had them rest right at the gate of the high wall, ready to fight at any moment. But just like during the day, although everyone was very alert all night, it was a night tensely spent in vain, as the demons still did not show. What in the world was happening? 2 consecutive days of tranquility increasingly worried Rocky, because it was unusually quiet to a frightening extent. In fact, Lin Feng was feeling the same way at this time. When Rocky personally led his troops to guard the high wall all night, Lin Feng also stayed awake all night. Surprisingly, he really hoped for the demons to appear that night, because that was the only way he would feel at ease. But his hope did not materialize, as the demons did not show up. And when Rocky and Lin Feng again swapped their defensive duties, this heavy burden now lay on Lin Feng's shoulders. Taking over the duty of defense, he was just as deeply troubled as Rocky and stood on the high wall for a whole day and night, yet still did not encounter the demons that should have appeared. Not only that, but after another 3 whole days, the demons still did not show up. To calculate it carefully, it had been a whole 6 days since the demons had appeared, as if these creatures had vanished without a trace. However, this situation was highly unusual for Backhill Village, because even when there wasn't any mining happening, the demons would visit every now and then, albeit in smaller numbers. There had never been a memory of not seeing any signs of demons for 6 consecutive days. Now everyone was getting anxious, wondering, where are the demons? Where have the demons gone? The demons disappeared. For 6 continuous days, the demons vanished without a trace, leaving everyone in great unease. This might sound strange. Aren't the demons disappearing a good thing? No, it absolutely isn't a good thing. Please don't forget, the demons had occupied the land for a century now. Every corner of the land bore the trace of demons, the only difference being in their numbers. Under such circumstances, their omnipresence was the norm, and their sudden disappearance was abnormal. This was especially true for Backhill Village at the moment. Both the group from Backhill Village led by Lin Feng and the Thunderhawk City Guard squad commanded by Rocky couldn't help but worry. They had prepared for continuous attacks from the demons, and according to past experience, once the mining began at Backhill Village, it always ended up this way without exception. But the exception occurred, with no attacks from the demons on the village for 6 straight days, nor even a sighting of a shadow, which immediately made everyone tense. Where did the demons go? No one knew the answer to this question. But in order to find out the answer, Rocky and Lin Feng didn't spare any efforts, eventually deciding unanimously to dispatch a skyship for reconnaissance. Before this, the skyship had remained docked at Skybreaker Peak and hadn't been deployed since the previous 2 battles were too minor to necessitate its use. However, the extended absence of the demons troubled both Lin Feng and Rocky profoundly, compelling them to send out the skyship for reconnaissance to be better prepared should any situation arise. On the other hand, the sudden disappearance of the demons, though unsettling for everyone, also had a silver lining for Rocky and his team. It allowed many days for recuperation, and the soldiers led by Mani were mostly healed from their injuries. This was definitely good news worth celebrating for Rocky, particularly Mani's recovery, which restored the former strength of the Guard Corps, allowing them to fight against the demons with full force once again. Moreover, Dusa, who had been whipped 3 times, had also nearly recovered. Her quick recovery was partly due to the robust constitution of beastmen. Despite being a young girl, as a beastman, her recovery was much more robust than that of a regular human. Plus, credit must also go to Lilia, who administered the whipping. The reason Lilia personally carried out the whipping was to set an example and to protect Dusa. Being a 3rd-level warrior, Lilia's control over her strength was naturally much greater than an ordinary guard's. Thus, although her whipping looked severe, the lashes inflicted on Dusa weren't very heavy, undoubtedly alleviating much of Dusa's suffering. Since her recovery, Dusa had learned from this ordeal and had become obedient and well-behaved, now only moving within the camp boundaries, daring not to run around anymore. However, the young girl's nature was inherently lively, so even though she had become much more obedient and well-behaved than before, she still couldn't stay idle. Take today, for example. Today, as Lin Feng was responsible for the defense duties, the recovered Mani continued to lead the Guard Corps in training. Once her father left the tent, Dusa sneaked out, carrying her own bow and arrows. With her own bow and arrows, Dusa arrived alone in front of the post where she was once punished, then stood 100 steps from it, and immediately proceeded to draw her bow and knock her arrow. Although Dusa had become much more obedient in recent days, deep down, she still wished to fight alongside Mani and hadn't forgotten to diligently practice. And it must be admitted that Dusa's archery skills were indeed exquisite. Claiming her to be a talent in archery wouldn't be an exaggeration. Because Monty, who didn't want his daughter to suffer any harm, never taught her archery, yet Dusa had managed to master the skill of endless bullseye through self-learning. Standing 100 steps away from the post, Dusa pulled open her longbow and took a brief aim before shooting an arrow. And in the blink of an eye, a whooshing sound was heard as the arrow accurately struck the post. Afterward, Dusa began to shoot arrows continuously at a rapid pace. Although the speed slightly affected her accuracy, it was only a minor impact, and all the arrows she shot still hit the wooden stakes. Seeing that all the arrows she shot had hit their targets, Dusa giggled proudly, flashing her small canine teeth, then gleefully ran up to the stakes and plucked each arrow out one by one. But just as she had removed all the arrows from the stakes and was skipping back to resume her practice, the sudden jarring sound of a bell rang out. "The demons are here!" Hearing the bell from the tower, Dusa was startled at first, but then she understood what was happening. The demons that had disappeared for so many days had finally appeared. As she heard the bell, Rocky's figure appeared above the camp. Hearing the bell, he used the void magic armor to fly up into the air and then quickly headed toward the high wall. Soon after he left, Lilia and Mani also rushed out from within the camp, running toward the location of the high wall. "Dusa, stay put in the camp." As Mani was rushing toward the high wall, he brushed past Dusa in the camp and shouted loudly. Hearing this, Dusa pursed her lips, clearly reluctant, but but she suppressed the urge to join in and stayed obediently in the camp. With the demons finally appearing, Dusa no longer had the heart to practice archery and simply jumped onto a nearby stake, standing on a pole to look toward the high wall, but she couldn't see anything. Looking left and right and seeing nothing, Dusa jumped off the stake disheartened and glumly returned to her tent. Damn it, everyone treats me like a child. It's infuriating. Back in her tent, Dusa sat on her bed, pouting and very dissatisfied. I'm already 15 years old. My father had already joined the army at my age, but they won't let me join the Guard Corps. It's so annoying. Sitting on the bed, Dusa complained while angrily punching the mattress, making it thump loudly. N/O/vel/b/forward/c/om. After complaining for a while, perhaps feeling tired, she simply lay down on the bed, muttering to herself about how boring it was, and imagining herself in battle, shooting flawlessly. In this daydream, she didn't know how much time had passed until she sleepily opened her eyes, having unknowingly fallen asleep. However, as soon as she opened her eyes, still dazed and not fully awake, she suddenly heard a voice outside the tent. She knew this voice all too well. It was her father's voice. Everyone, get ready for battle. Prepare to support the troops at Backhill Village. Hearing this, Dusa abruptly sat up from her bed and ran outside the tent. As soon as she stepped out of the tent, she saw the Guard Corps hurrying past her. What's going on? What happened? After looking for her father to no avail, the confused Dusa had no choice but to grab a guard and ask. I'm not sure, but it seems the number of demons is too great, and the troops at Backhill Village are almost overwhelmed. After saying this, the guard she had grabbed quickly left, joining the main force heading toward the high wall. In the blink of an eye, the entire camp was left with only Dusa alone. Before she could react, the entire campsite seemed to have emptied, leaving her alone. Dusa had just woken from a nap and hadn't quite grasped the situation yet. Stunned for quite some time, Dusa finally looked up to see the sun still high in the sky, indicating that she hadn't slept long, just a quick nap at most. Having spent so many days at the camp, she had already figured out the defense rotation between Rocky and Lin Feng and how they supported each other. It was Lin Feng's turn to be on defense duty today, but the Guard Corps had suddenly been deployed. Could it be that the troops from Backhill Village couldn't hold their ground? This seemed unbelievable to Dusa, as she had heard Mani praise the troops of Backhill Village, stating they were highly skilled. If they were to face off directly against the guards of Thunderhawk City, the latter would likely lose. Could it be that even such skilled troops couldn't withstand the demons' assault and needed support from the Guard Corps of Thunderhawk City? Just how many demons had attacked this time? This made Dusa unavoidably worried, especially since Mani was also on the battlefield. She couldn't help but feel anxious. Standing alone in the campsite, she then looked toward the tall walls, but they were too far to see anything. Not even the sounds of battle could be heard, which only exacerbated her anxiety. Yet worry was futile, although she thought of running up to the wall to see for herself. Remembering the trouble she caused last time, she had no choice but to suppress such thoughts. With no other options, Dusa reluctantly returned to her tent to pick up her bow and arrows, deciding to try to calm her nerves with some archery practice. So, in a short while, she was in front of the wooden stakes again, continuously shooting arrows. Perhaps due to her worry, her aim was off, and many arrows missed their target. Instead of easing her anxiety, this only made her more upset. With nothing else to do, she pouted and irritably went to collect the arrow feathers one by one. Boom! Boom boom! Just as Dusa was irritably gathering up all the arrow feathers, a sudden barrage of thunderous cannon fire reached her ears, and she quickly turned to look toward the walls. Is that the sound of magic energy cannons? Upon hearing the cannon fire, Dusa immediately realized it was the sound of magic energy cannons. Could it be that the skyships had been deployed? A small village like Backhill Village didn't have magic cannons. The tall walls at the entrance looked impressive, but there were only 2 defense towers on either side and no magic cannons on top of the walls. Therefore, the only option left to use magic cannons for bombardment was the skyship. This meant that the sound of cannons signified the deployment of the skyships. What exactly is happening outside? The roaring cannons filled Dusa with immense urgency. She hadn't expected, after so many days had passed, that the demon attacks would become so fierce that not only had Lin Feng and Rocky taken their respective troops out one after another, but the skyships had also joined the battlefield. Only now did Dusa understand why Rocky and her father had looked so worried over the past few days. It seemed that after lying dormant for so long, the demons had indeed launched a severe attack. But what kind of demonic force had arrived? Strong enough that both the troops of Backhill Village and the guards of Thunderhawk City couldn't hold, forcing the use of skyships to bomb them. Being in the campsite, Dusa naturally couldn't know the answer, but the less she knew about a situation, the more she wanted to investigate it. Thus, she was caught in a dilemma, debating whether she should run up to the wall to check for herself. Furrowing her brows, Dusa thought to herself, if she could sneak to the wall without anyone noticing, would there be no problem? Even if someone did discover her, she could just say that being alone in the campsite was too frightening. That way, her father wouldn't get angry, right? At least the city lord wouldn't blame her, right? After pondering for quite some time, Dusa felt her idea was feasible. However, just as she was nodding to herself, believing her plan to be flawless, suddenly a group of people came running from the direction of the walls. What's this? Recognizing the approaching group as the guard corps, Dusa realized that the guards were heading her way. Has the battle ended? Seeing the guards returning, Dusa immediately smiled, thinking that the battle must have ended. However, when she looked closely at these guards, she realized that there was a small squad of them, and they were carrying stretchers 2 by 2, bearing the wounded on them. The battle hadn't ended after all. These guards were returning to transport the injured. Seeing the guards carrying a stretcher towards the camp, Dusa hurried over to meet them. Uncle Aga, has the battle not ended yet? As she approached the guard carrying the stretcher, Dusa recognized the leader as Aga and hurriedly helped carry the stretcher while asking. At the same time, she glanced at the stretcher and, with that look, her whole being was stunned. No, shocked. Sister Lilia. Among those being carried on the stretcher back to camp was Lilia herself. Seeing Lilia on the stretcher, Dusa was instantly dumbfounded. She had never imagined that Lilia would be carried back on a stretcher. However, fortunately, Lilia's injuries didn't seem too severe, as Dusa saw her struggling to get off the stretcher when she looked her way. Unfortunately, her struggles were stopped by the surrounding guards. What are you doing? Let me go! Seeing the guards pressing down on her, preventing her from getting off, Lilia shouted loudly, but this time no one listened to her. Captain, bringing you back is a command from the city lord. We can't obey you. Let me go, you bunch of... Dusa. Lilia, who had been struggling incessantly, caught sight of Dusa by chance. Sister Lilia, what's happened to you? How could you be so badly injured? Helping to carry the stretcher, Dusa looked towards Lilia with an anxious face, her eyes already brimming with tears. Seeing Dusa, Lilia, who had been ceaselessly striving to get off the stretcher, calmed down a bit and then smiled at Dusa. Little girl, sister is fine. It's just a minor injury from being careless. Dusa couldn't possibly believe those obviously comforting words. Besides, she wasn't blind. Lilia's body was covered in blood, and although most of it wasn't her own, a bloody wound on her arm couldn't be hidden from anyone. Lilia was injured, and the injuries were far from light. Therefore, afterward, Dusa didn't ask any more questions and, together with the guards, carried Lilia and the other injured back to the camp. After settling Lilia and the others, the leading Aga called Dusa to his side. Little girl, the city lord has an order for you. Ah, what order? Hearing Aga's words, Dusa froze. The city lord ordered you to keep an eye on Captain Lilia. No matter what, she must not leave the camp. Also, the village doctor will soon come over with others. I will leave 2 people here. When the time comes, you need to help out, okay? Okay, n/o/vel/b//in.c//om. She nodded emphatically and agreed. After saying this, Aga left 2 guards who had also sustained minor injuries, and then hurriedly led the others away. Seeing Aga leading the people away in a hurry, Dusa suddenly remembered something and called out. Uncle Aga, what about my father? How is he doing? The instructor is fine, don't worry. Shouting back, Aga left the camp with his men, and hearing his answer, Dusa was also much relieved. However, no sooner had she calmed down than she turned to see Lilia's figure. That bastard Rocky. He's really infuriating. Standing behind Dusa, Lilia muttered and then strode towards the exit of the camp, obviously intending to return to the battlefield. Lilia, sister, you can't go. Seeing Lilia trying to return to the battlefield, Dusa thought of Rocky's instructions and hurriedly spread her arms like an eagle catching a chick, blocking her way. Dusa, stop messing around. Lilia glanced at Dusa and, without another word, walked around her. But as soon as she took a step, Dusa stepped across and stood in front of her again. Sister Lilia, the city lord has instructed me to keep an eye on you, so I won't let you pass. Biting her lip, Dusa was stubbornly unyielding, showing no sign of backing down. Her stubbornness frustrated Lilia. If it had been anyone else from the guard corps obstructing her, Lilia would have already knocked them down. However, she couldn't do that to Dusa, so she just sighed. As she sighed, she suddenly felt dizzy. If Dusa hadn't quickly supported her, Lilia would have almost collapsed. Lilia's injuries were not light at all. N/O/vel/B//C///OM. Although she might not have suffered severe external injuries, the cut the demons made on her arm caused her to lose too much blood, making her unfit for further battle, which was precisely why Rocky had ordered her to withdraw to the village. Feeling almost faint, Lilia had no choice but to return to the tent with Dusa's support and rest with the other injured brought back. Not long after, the village doctor arrived with the villagers and began treating the injured. Dusa naturally helped a lot during the treatment. Monty used to get injured often when he was still a demon hunter, so Dusa was quite experienced with such matters. But precisely because of this, when Dusa saw the wounds on the guards, she couldn't help but exclaim. The guards brought back had very severe injuries. Although there had been casualties in previous battles, the guards had only sustained minor injuries and had recovered after a few days of rest, including Monty, who was the most severely injured. But this time, the guards' injuries were much more serious. Among the guards who were brought back with Lilia, one had his chest torn open, a vast wound even tearing through his runic armor. When Dusa and the doctor were treating him, the guard was screaming non-stop. But he was relatively lucky compared to the other four who were brought back with him. Their injuries were even more severe, and they had all fallen into a coma. How fierce was the battle still raging outside? All the guards involved in the direct combat were equipped with rune equipment. Although the rune equipment crafted by Rocky might not compare to Wencel's creations, it still packs some power. The combination of a runic shield and runic armor could significantly boost their defensive power. And normally, not even a black-eyed demon could severely injure a guard with a single blow. Yet here, all these guards were severely injured, even comatose. What did that imply? It implied they weren't just injured by a single strike from a demon. They must have been struck countless times to have such severe injuries. Just how many demons had come this time? This question popped up in Dusa's mind once again, and evidently, the only one who knew the answer was Lilia. So after she finished helping the doctor with the wounded, she ran over to Lilia. Now it seemed that among those carried back, Lilia was the least injured, as she was still conscious at least. But if you thought that, you would be gravely mistaken, because Lilia was wearing a full set of rune equipment crafted by Wencel. The fact that she was injured even with such gear meant one could only imagine how severe the strikes she endured in battle were. Stay tuned for updates on Empire. Sister Lilia, you should drink some water first. Seeing Lilia's cracked lips, a somewhat clueless Dusa hurriedly got her a cup of water, then sat beside her. Sister Lilia, how many demons have come outside, and how could everyone be injured like this? Outside? Facing Dusa's question, Lilia had just started to speak when another bout of chaotic footsteps came from outside the tent, and soon soldiers rushed into the tent carrying stretchers. More wounded had been carried in. Seeing more wounded being brought in, Dusa and Lilia naturally couldn't continue their casual chat. Dusa immediately went to help, And after Lilia gulped down the water in her cup, she also stood up resolutely and went to assist. The wounded brought back this time were from the troops of Backhill Village, and the number of injured soldiers was over a dozen. In order to help these wounded soldiers, everyone was frantically busy, not even having time to speak. Compared to the injuries of the Guard Corps, the soldiers from Backhill Village were more severely injured. They did not have rune equipment to protect themselves. Wearing only regular equipment, they relied mainly on experience when facing the attacks of demons, and basically had no external forces to rely on. So once injured, it was bound to be serious. In such a situation, every soldier brought back had severe wounds. The worst among them had a leg brutally torn off by a demon, and his screams filled the tent upon being brought in. But not long after, the screams disappeared. He died. The battle against the demons had finally begun to claim lives. As the deceased soldier was carried out of the tent, everyone inside fell silent. Even the busy doctor spoke softer when directing others, as if he was whispering. An invisible gloom shrouded everyone. Under this oppressive gloom, after who knows how long of hustle, they finally managed to settle the new batch of the wounded, and then the tent fell into a deathly silence. In this deathly silence, the wounded soldiers either lay on beds or on the ground, each with a vacant look, not knowing what they were staring at, while the doctors and villagers of Backhill Village all remained silent, some silently shedding tears. Their village was not large, and everyone recognized each other. So even though not all the deceased guards were their relatives, it left the villagers feeling sorrowful nonetheless. This mood also affected Dusa, who likewise seemed drained of energy. She stopped talking and just sat next to Lilia, starting to zone out as if worried about something. You don't need to worry. Seeing Dusa zoning out by herself, Lilia wrapped an arm around her and said, You don't need to worry, Mani will be all right. At least he had no problems when I was pulled back. Really? Upon hearing this, Dusa immediately turned her head, her face showing much less concern. Of course it's true. Why would I lie to you? Then, what about the city lord? The city lord. That fool should be okay, I suppose. Thinking of Rocky, Lilia felt a surge of anger. How could she have been injured if not for him? Unfortunately, not knowing what had happened, Dusa nodded upon hearing this and said with full conviction, Right. The city lord is so powerful. He certainly won't have any problems. After learning that both her father and Rocky were all right, Dusa's oppressed mood improved, and she couldn't help but ask, Sister Lilia, exactly how many demons came this time? 10. Lilia glanced at Dusa and immediately gave the answer. However, her reply not only shocked Dusa, but also made the villagers of Backhill Village look at her, disbelief in each of their eyes. 10 demons? How could that be possible? The forces of Backhill Village combined with Rocky's Guard Corps. How could these two forces suffer such severe losses against an attack of just 10 demons? But as everyone was incredulous, Lilia continued to say, At first there were only 10 demons, then another 10 came, and then another 10, and then another, until when I was pulled back, another 10 had arrived. 10 demons, then another 10, and then another 10, and then another 10, finally another 10? Lilia's words left Dusa and the others momentarily unable to respond. They weren't sure if they hadn't heard clearly or hadn't counted properly, but they simply didn't grasp how many demons there actually were. But without a doubt, there were a lot of demons attacking this time. Indeed, that was the case. Your journey continues at Empire. After hiding for so many days, the demons not only reappeared, but did so like a relentless tide. The first wave of demons that appeared was indeed only 10, and this number had initially greatly relieved Lin Feng, who was in charge of the defense, because in his view, 10 demons might not be few, but the troops of Backhill Village were definitely capable of repelling them. Not just him, even Rocky, who had rushed to the high wall first, relaxed, believing that Lin Feng would surely be able to hold them off. The actual situation was similar to what both had imagined. When Lin Feng led the troops of Backhill Village out beyond the high walls and engaged the 10 demons, they quickly gained the upper hand. But at that moment, the second wave of demons appeared. The second wave of demons was also precisely 10 in number. However, Lin Feng's troops had only just killed 3 from the first wave, so when the two groups of demons combined their forces, their numbers reached 17. Faced with these 17 demons, Lin Feng and his troops instantly lost all their advantages. The Backhill village troops numbered 200, but half of them were archers and mages, equipped for range combat. Only 100 warriors could directly confront the demons, which meant each warrior was faced with the task of taking on nearly 2 demons, instantly multiplying the pressure on Lin Feng and his troops. Fortunately, Rocky responded quickly enough. Almost at the same time the second wave of demons appeared, he had Mani mobilize the guard corps, and immediately thereafter, he led the guards out over the high wall. Rocky's timely support greatly reduced the pressure on Lin Feng and his troops, and with the help of the ranged units, they managed to steady the battle. But then, an unexpected turn of events occurred as the third wave of demons suddenly entered their field of vision. This third wave was also 10 strong and charged directly into the battlefield on arrival. By the time this third wave appeared, Lin Feng and his troops, along with Rocky and the Guard Corps, had only just killed 6 demons, which meant that as the third wave joined the battle, the number of demons swelled to 21. If one thought that 21 demons weren't enough, then the following fourth wave of demons completely threw everyone into panic. Shortly after the third wave entered the battlefield, the fourth wave appeared, also 10 in number, and quickly joined the fray, imposing an almost mountainous pressure on both Rocky's and Lin Feng's troops as soon as they entered. At this moment, Rocky made a quick decision. He flew into the air and released a massive magic flash, signaling the skyship troops. Facing such a multitude of demons, relying solely on their troops was no longer viable, so he decisively called for the skyship. About 10 minutes after the signal was sent, the skyship arrived with utmost speed, and then followed the scene Dusa witnessed with the sound of cannons. The timely arrival of the skyship relieved much of the pressure on everyone, but the tide of battle did not turn in their favor because the skyship had arrived too late. The greatest function of the skyship was to take advantage of aerial superiority to bombard demons with the enormous power of magic cannons, which could deal heavy damage to demons. However, in this battle, by the time the skyship arrived at the battlefield, Rocky and Lin Feng had already led their troops into close combat with the demons, with both sides entangled with each other, making it impossible for the skyship to conduct a wide range of bombardment. After all, magic cannons do not discriminate. In such a situation, the arriving skyships could only bombard isolated demons as best as they could, and although this had a certain effect, it was very limited, which is why Dusa heard only sporadic sounds of cannon fire. Thus, the battlefield entered the most brutal phase where Rocky and Lin Feng, leading their respective troops, were thoroughly entwined in combat with the demons, engaging at close quarters. And as the battle continued, casualties started to mount. This led to the scene where Lilia was injured and carried back to the village. With her strength, Lilia should not have been injured so easily. Clad in her runic armor, her defense was second only to Rocky, and she would normally not be harmed. The real reason she was injured was not that she couldn't defeat the demons, but because she was protecting Rocky. N/O/vel/B//, and .C//OM. In this battle, Rocky, wearing the void magic armor, naturally became the primary force, because he could fly. The advantage of being able to fight in the air made him even more valuable on the battlefield than Lin Feng, who had the highest rank, and Rocky himself was well aware of this. Therefore, he fought extremely bravely in combat, managing to entangle 3 demons by himself. To hold off 3 demons single-handedly was an act of courage that would make everyone give a thumbs up. But such an act was clearly beyond his capacity. Rocky was indeed strong with the enhancement from the void magic armor. If the combat power of everyone was ranked, he would only be second to Lin Feng, even stronger than Mani, who only had 1 hand left. But please don't forget, this strength came solely from the boost provided by the void magic armor, and Rocky himself did not possess this kind of power. If the void magic armor could provide a boost in raw power, when it came to combat experience, Rocky was severely lacking. He had participated in too few battles, which led to his serious lack of experience. This deficiency might not show when facing a small number of demons, but once the number exceeded a certain threshold, he simply could not cope. And so, as the battle went on, Rocky, who was holding off 3 demons, started to face increasingly dangerous situations. Multiple times he fell into extreme peril, often being snatched from midair by the demons he couldn't dodge in time, and it was to protect him that Lilia got injured. By the time Lilia was injured and carried back to the village, she didn't know what happened on the battlefield afterward, but she was certain that by the time she was evacuated, the 5th wave of demons had appeared. Yes, when Lilia was carried away, the 5th wave of demons arrived. Since Lilia was forcefully put on a stretcher when the 5th wave of demons appeared, she did not see the exact number of demons. But based on the previous situation, it could be inferred that there were no fewer than 10 demons in the 5th wave. This is why she wanted to rush back to the battlefield as soon as she reached the camp. Lilia knew very well that once the 5th wave of demons joined the fight, the pressure on Rocky and Lin Feng would become even more enormous. This fact had actually been confirmed. The wounded soldiers who were carried back in succession were the best proof, with the increasing number of casualties clearly indicating that the pressure on the battlefield had reached unimaginable levels. In such circumstances, although Lilia kept comforting Dusa, she was far more worried than Dusa, equally eager to know the situation on the battlefield after her departure, wondering if a 6th or even a 7th wave of demons had appeared after the arrival of the 5th wave. Compared to others, Lilia was actually even more worried about the situation on the battlefield. But unfortunately, just like everyone else, she could only wait in silence now. The only thing she could probably do was pray, praying that the gods would bestow their blessings. Regrettably, such prayers seemed futile, as more and more wounded soldiers were continuously brought back in the time that followed, undoubtedly proving that the battle was still ongoing and had become even more brutal. Time slipped away minute by minute, and the sky went from broad daylight to sunset. During this process, the number of wounded steadily increased, with soldiers from the Guard Corps and Backhill Village, amounting to dozens of people. In this situation, Lilia and Dusa didn't even have time to worry anymore. They did all they could to treat the wounded, which was the most they were able to do. "Sister Lilia, listen." After an indeterminate amount of time, just after she finished bandaging a wounded soldier, Dusa suddenly lifted her head. She looked towards the outside of the tent and said to Lilia, "Sister Lilia, the artillery fire has stopped." The artillery fire. Dusa's words made Lilia listen carefully, realizing indeed, just as she said, the constant bombardment that was heard before had unknowingly ceased. The cessation of artillery fire. Could it be that the battle was over? With this thought, Lilia quickly put aside everything in her hands and hurried out of the tent. Upon leaving the tent, she immediately ran toward the high wall, but after only a few steps, she faintly heard a series of noises coming from beyond the wall. That sound, it was cheering. Cheering? Had they won? Could it be that Rocky and the others had already won? The faint cheering from the other side of the wall made Lilia pause for a moment before rushing toward the wall. But just as she arrived in front of the wall, before she could climb up, the gates of the wall were opened, and soon after, people appeared, carrying a large number of stretchers. It looked like the battle had indeed ended, and as soon as it did, the casualties from the battlefield were immediately brought back to the village. Under normal circumstances, this would all be expected, but when Lilia saw those carrying the wounded appear before her, she panicked because among these people was Monty. Monty was not lying on a stretcher. He was actually carrying one. Who could be injured that would make Monty personally carry a stretcher? The answer was self-evident. So Lilia immediately rushed toward Monty, and when she reached the stretcher he was carrying, she saw the scene she least wanted to witness. Rocky, clad in void magic armor, was lying on the stretcher. Rocky! At that moment, Rocky, who lay on the stretcher, was covered in blood, his face as pale as paper, which left Lilia completely stunned. Even in times when she had been seriously wounded without as much as furrowing her brow, she now suddenly burst into tears. "I'm fine." As Lilia uncontrollably started crying, Rocky on the stretcher lifted his arm and slowly grabbed her small hand. Then he revealed a smile. It was evident that Rocky was trying to make his smile appear as manly as possible. But given his current condition and pale face, his smile wasn't reassurance for Lilia, but rather it increased her heartache. So, without waiting for Rocky to finish speaking, Lilia eagerly asked, "Where are you injured? Do you still recognize who I am? Where does it hurt on your body? Can you move your leg?" As she ran alongside the stretcher toward the camp, Lilia bombarded him with questions in rapid succession, so quickly that Rocky simply couldn't keep up with the replies. Left with no choice, Rocky had to muster all his strength to make a stopping gesture to her. And only then did the incessantly questioning Lilia pause, and at last Rocky had the chance to speak. "I'm not injured. It's just that the void magic armor is out of mana. You don't need to worry." Although it was a short sentence, Rocky spoke in fits and starts, indicating that he had no energy left even to speak. But he was not lying. Even though he lay on a stretcher being carried, he was indeed uninjured. The reason he was on a stretcher was entirely due to exhaustion, and on top of that, the void magic armor had run out of mana. The battle that had just ended had drained all of Rocky's strength, so as soon as it was over, he collapsed completely, unable to even stand. At the same time, the void magic armor had also depleted its mana during the fight, and once the mana was gone, the full weight of the armor immediately pressed down on Rocky's body, making the already exhausted warrior feel as though he were a small mountain, and leaving him no choice but to be carried back on a stretcher. This explanation did not come from Rocky himself, as he lacked the energy to explain, but from Monty, who told Lilia. After hearing Monter's words, Lilia's breakdown eased, and she ran back to the camp alongside the stretcher. The troops outside the city walls returned to the village in succession shortly thereafter, and the outcome of the battle was self-evident. They had won. However, Lilia did not know how exactly they had won. Having returned to the village early, she had not had time to ask before she joined the ranks of those treating the injured. In fact, even though the troops led by Rocky and Lin Feng had won, the victory had come at a colossal cost. The casualties of the battle were staggeringly high, leaving those who heard about it dumbfounded. In this battle, Rocky and Lin Feng had led their respective units into the fray. A total of 300 warriors had entered the battle, but by the end, the number of those either wounded or killed was as high as 63, with 45 injured and 18 dead. n/o/vel/b/and.c//om. With 300 joining the fight, 63 had become casualties, a ratio of 1 in 5. But even this high casualty rate was not accurate, for out of the 300 who participated, a full 100 were part of a ranged unit. This means that these 100 supported the fight, but did not engage in direct combat with the demons, leaving only 200 warriors who truly fought hand-to-hand with the demons. So, if we talk about the casualty rate among the warriors in this battle, the number would be even more staggering, exceeding 1 in 4. That is to say, after the battle, on average, 1 out of every 4 warriors was injured, and out of every 10, a warrior was killed by the demons. The battle against the demons was just that brutal. 100 years ago, there was a reason why the demons swept across the continent as soon as they appeared. That reason was that they were too powerful, so mighty that human strength could hardly compete. And today's battle served as the best proof of this. And please do not forget, the number of demons Rocky and Lin Feng faced today did not exceed 100. So when the battle was over, there was no time to revel in the joy of victory. Treating the wounded, reorganizing the troops, and other matters awaited their attention, because no one knew if the demons would attack again tomorrow, and everyone needed to continue preparations for the next battle. That night, no one in Back Hill Village got any sleep. They were busy until dawn, when they finally got a brief moment to rest. "How are you feeling?" Sitting beside Rocky's bed, Lilia saw that he had woken up and handed him a glass of water while asking with concern. Since Rocky was carried back, Lilia stopped attending to others, devoting all her attention to caring for him. And Rocky had fallen into a deep slumber upon his return, sleeping through the whole night before waking. "Much better." Taking a sip of water, Rocky looked at Lilia and noticed she looked haggard, obviously having not slept all night. "You don't have to take such care of me. I'm fine." Seeing that Lilia had been taking care of him, Rocky felt a pang of discomfort, but at the same time, his heart was warmed. Even though he knew his words would likely be in vain, he still hoped that Lilia would take some rest. As he had anticipated, Lilia gave him an indifferent look. "I'm not seriously affected." After saying this, she eagerly asked, "What happened after I left yesterday's battle? Did more demons come?" Lilia had been very concerned about yesterday's fight. Even now that the battle was over, she still wanted to understand what had happened. Hearing her question, Rocky simply nodded. "They did." At this point, he took another sip of water and then continued. "After you left yesterday, the 5th wave of demons arrived, followed by another, making it a total of 6 waves of demons. In yesterday's battle, a total of 6 waves of demons came," Rocky said flatly. But his matter-of-fact tone did nothing to reduce the impact of his words. And upon hearing this, Lilia couldn't help but gasp. 6 waves of demons? Yeah, during yesterday's battle, 60 demons came in total. While speaking, Rocky glanced at Lilia and then, without warning, flashed a grin. "Heh, I killed 4 demons in the fight. Pretty impressive, huh?" "Impressive my foot." Seeing Rocky suddenly adopt a teasing and smiling demeanor, Lilia couldn't restrain herself and, raising her fist, thumped him on the head. Didn't he realize how worried everyone was? Struck on the head by Lilia's fist, Rocky chuckled twice, and Lilia, helpless at his reaction, rolled her eyes before pressing on. "Since another wave of demons came after I left, how on earth did you win?" "With 6 waves of demons in total, that made 60 of them. Although the demons were being killed off during the process, it was not as fast as their arrival, which meant the number of demons they faced kept increasing." Honestly, Lilia couldn't comprehend how Rocky and the others could have possibly won such a battle. She clearly remembered that when she was carried back to the village, the forces on the battlefield had already been pushed to their limits and simply couldn't withstand any more assaults from the demons. It was all thanks to the skyships. Yet, faced with her question, Rocky directly provided the answer. The reason why they managed to win yesterday's battle was that the skyships played a crucial role. Although the skyships joined the battlefield late, arriving when the 4th wave of demons had not only already arrived but were entangled in combat with the soldiers, this caused the skyships to fail to exert their full power, and their effect was extremely limited on the battlefield. However, as the 5th and 6th waves of demons appeared one after the other, the significance of the skyships became evident. When the 5th wave of demons appeared, the skyships directly bombarded them with fierce firepower. 10 skyships firing in unison blew away more than half of this wave before they could join the battle. And by the time the 6th wave of demons appeared, the skyships followed suit, resulting in numerous casualties under their bombardment as well. Therefore, although 2 more waves of demons arrived after Lilia had returned to the village, thanks to the skyships, these waves did not exert too much pressure on Rocky and Lin Feng, at least not fatal pressure. It was for this reason that they finally achieved victory. So that's how it was. Listening to Rocky's brief account of the battlefield situation after her departure, Lilia contemplated as she nodded, then looked at him. "Rocky, what do you plan to do next?" Although they had won yesterday's battle, the mission was far from over. Less than half of the month had passed, meaning the demons would continue their assaults, and Rocky would have to keep defending. But after yesterday's fierce battle, both the Guard Corps and the Backhill Village forces had suffered heavy losses. The Guard Corps had over 10 injured and 3 fatalities. The number who could participate in the next battle would not exceed 80. N/O/vel/B//and.C//om. Compared to that, the losses of Backhill Village were even more severe. Due to the poor equipment of the soldiers from Backhill Village, over 20 were injured in the battle, and more than 10 died on the battlefield, greatly diminishing their strength. Because of this, it became impossible for either Rocky or Lin Feng to continue to fight the demons with their own troops separately. Moreover, from the last battle, it was clear that there would be no more minor skirmishes against just a few demons. Each battle from now on was bound to be a bitter struggle. So, how to defend became the current priority. And regarding this matter, Rocky had already made some plans, so he directly said, "From now on, Both sides must defend together. Otherwise, we will definitely not be able to withstand the demons. I will lead the guard corps, and Lin Feng will lead the troops from Backhill Village. Each of us will command our own forces. There is no other way. It was quite coincidental that just as Rocky had finished speaking, someone entered his tent, and it was none other than Lin Feng. Commander Rocky, how are you feeling? As Lin Feng walked into the tent, he nodded to Lilia and then came over to Rocky's bedside, asking with concern. Much better. I reckon I'll be fine after resting for one more day. With a slight smile, Rocky sat up from the bed and said, Captain Lin Feng, you've come about merging our troops together, haven't you? Lin Feng's arrival was not unexpected. Much like Lilia was concerned about how to cope with the upcoming battles, Lin Feng would naturally think of this too. Right, I wanted to ask for your opinion. Indeed, Lin Feng nodded directly, indicating that he was indeed there for this reason. Afterward, Rocky discussed the matter with him. They had no objections to merging their forces because both had mentioned this point at the start of the mission, and everyone had been prepared for it early on. So the issue was quickly settled after a brief discussion, with both sides agreeing to lead their troops together in the coming battles, each commanding their own teams. At the same time, the skyships could not continue to remain idle above Break Sky Mountain. The location where the skyships were docked was a bit too far from Backhill Village. Although it would only take about 10 minutes to get there, in the rapidly changing battlefield, this time was enough to determine the outcome of a battle. In fact, in the previous battle, if the skyships had arrived earlier, the casualties of the troops would certainly not have been so great. Therefore, Rocky decided to dispatch 2 skyships for patrol every day. On one hand, to provide early warning, and on the other hand, to allow these 2 skyships to quickly join the armor in suppressing the battlefield as soon as the battle started, before the other skyships arrived. After they had finished discussing this matter, Lin Feng told Rocky about another issue. He indeed had other matters to discuss with Rocky. Commander Rocky, I discussed with the village chief yesterday. The number of demons is too great this time. If we continue fighting, I estimate that it will be difficult for us to last a month. So it's been decided to shorten the mining schedule to 20 days. Reducing the mining period means that your mission time is now 20 days instead of a month. But rest assured, Commander Rocky, the commission for the mission will still be paid as we previously agreed, and all the demons killed in battle, including those we kill, will belong to you. Commander Rocky, what do you think? Having said that, Lin Feng looked at Rocky, seemingly waiting for his response. It was exceptionally rare, but in Lin Feng's gaze, there was also a hint of nervousness, as if he feared that Rocky would refuse his proposition. After everything with Rocky was settled, Lin Feng left, and with the day having fully dawned and Rocky needing recuperation, the entire defense of the village fell on Lin Feng alone, which meant he couldn't afford to stay for long. After Lin Feng had left, Rocky assigned Lilia a new task, asking her to check on the mood of the guard corps. At such a critical moment, it would be very troubling if there were any issues among the guard corps. This task would normally have been done by Rocky himself, because even though Lilia and Monty were highly regarded in the hearts of the guards, they still couldn't compare to Rocky. In the eyes of the guards, Rocky was not only their city lord, but also their idol. His personal presence would have definitely boosted their morale considerably. Regrettably, it wasn't that Rocky didn't want to go, but his body simply didn't allow it. The previous battle had completely drained him, and he couldn't get out of bed without a day's rest. If he had gone to the guard corps in his frail condition, it likely would not have boosted their morale, but instead might have demoralized them even further. Therefore, this task could only be entrusted to Lilia to first check on the spirits of the guards. And once Lilia had also left the tent, the bedridden Rocky quietly lay on his bed, pondering how to defend next while he waited for time to slowly pass. A day slowly went by, and it was yet another uneventful day. As for today's calm, whether it was Rocky, Lin Feng, or anyone else, they all had expected it, since a similar situation had just happened recently. The recurrence of similar conditions had given everyone experience. They all knew this moment of calm was just the quiet before the next storm arrived. Yet likewise, this foreboding also increased everyone's stress, because it implied that when the demons appeared next time, a fierce battle would erupt again. Facing this imminent fierce battle, no one could prevent it. Everyone could only wait behind the small high walls, waiting for what was inevitable to gradually arrive. However, this calm wasn't necessarily a bad thing for Backhill Village now. At the very least, it allowed the soldiers who had just fought in the dreadful battle to fully rest, and the injured soldiers to take the chance to heal. Just like that, the next day arrived in the blink of an eye. The veteran Rocky was finally able to get out of bed. After he left his bed, he moved around to stretch his muscles and found that although there was still a sensation of soreness, it was essentially manageable. Participating in the next battle would absolutely not be a problem. With that, he immediately went to the guard corps. The day before, Rocky had arranged for Lilia to check on the guards, but the news Lilia brought back wasn't good. After the previous dreadful battle, the morale of the guards was very low, almost as if they had been through a devastating defeat. This worried Rocky a lot because in the upcoming battle, the guard corps would be the main defense force. If there were issues with their mindset, then the battle could not be fought. So the moment Rocky recovered, he hurried to the guard corps. It wasn't long before Rocky arrived at the small training field of the camp. The guards had just finished their routine training and were resting. "My lord! My lord! My lord, you've come!" The guards, who were resting on the spot, quickly stood up at the sight of Rocky and instinctively began to form ranks. "No need to form ranks. I just came to see how you all are. Please sit down." Waving his hand at everyone, Rocky not only dispensed with formalities, but also sat down on the ground with them. "How are you holding up?" Sitting in a circle with the guards, Rocky didn't give a speech, but instead started chatting with them. Through this mission, especially after several consecutive battles, Rocky had become very familiar with these guards, and now he could accurately name each person in the guard corps. Similarly, the guards had become more familiar with him than before. At this point, although they still respected Rocky greatly, they no longer felt he was so unapproachable, but rather more affable. However, even so, when Rocky finished speaking, everyone still fell into silence, their heads lowered, none responding to his question, which made the atmosphere turn tense. "I heard from Lilia that you are not in a good state." In this tense atmosphere, Rocky spoke again. Unfortunately, no one answered him this time either. "Are you afraid of battle?" Rocky asked calmly as he looked at the silent guards. "Or is it that you are afraid of dying?" When he finished these words, some of the silent guards raised their heads, some even with tears in their eyes. Death, a common occurrence on battlefields, is something no one wants to accept or even mention. Yet, in the last battle, although the casualties within the guard corps were fewer than those of Backhill Village's troops, people still died on the battlefield, an unprecedented occurrence for everyone, leaving them unsure of how to cope. "Lord, Uncle Reed died. He died." At that moment, a young figure suddenly stood up and looked at Rocky. Robin. The one who stood up was none other than Robin, the youngest member of the guard corps. He looked at Rocky while tears streamed down his face, appearing overwhelmingly distressed. As for Reed, whom he mentioned, Rocky knew him well. Reed was a naively honest uncle, just a year younger than Aga, and was considered an elder in the guard corps. He usually took good care of everyone and was particularly protective of Robin, the youngest. Therefore, the two had a very good relationship and emotional connection. However, during the last battle, Reed did not survive. He was pierced in the chest by a demon and died instantly. This incident had deeply affected Robin. Therefore, when Rocky mentioned death, Robin thought of Reed, and his emotions instantly became uncontrollable, bursting into tears and sobs. Rocky had a profound impression of Robin. He still remembered how this tiger-headed young man looked during the assessment, and through their interactions over this period, he understood that Robin was entirely driven by emotions. Following that, Rocky beckoned to Robin, signaling him to come over. "Robin, are you scared? Scared of dying on the battlefield like Reed?" "No, I'm not scared. I want to avenge Uncle Reed." Asked thus by Rocky, Robin immediately lifted his head, his assertion unwavering. This response made Rocky nod, and then he turned to the other guards, asking the same question. "Are you scared? Are you scared of dying on the battlefield like Reed?" The same question, yet there were different answers. Some guards shook their heads, others lowered theirs. Everyone reacted differently. "Sir, Aren't you? Aren't you scared? Aren't you afraid of dying? It was unclear who suddenly asked Rocky in return, directing everyone's gaze towards him. Not scared. Without the slightest hesitation, Rocky shook his head. I am not afraid because I have all of you. Such a reply stunned all the guards, but Rocky did not elaborate further. He promptly stood up. Everyone buck up. We will definitely make it back alive this time. After saying this, he left the drill ground and headed straight for his tent, moving very hurriedly. He was indeed in a hurry because while he was chatting with the guards, he saw Monty arriving at the camp with Felly, and Monty soon gave him a meaningful glance from afar, indicating they go inside the tent first. Given the circumstances, Rocky had to abruptly end the conversation, as clearly something was up. In this mission, Felly had not stayed in Backhill Village to participate in the frontal combat, but had been assigned by Rocky as the commander of the skyship, in charge of directing 10 skyships to support the battlefield. Enjoy exclusive adventures from Empire. After the last battle, Rocky had ordered the skyships to patrol in groups of 2 around Backhill Village daily, and to immediately report any demon sightings. Felly was responsible for this task. Therefore, in principle, Felly should not have appeared at the camp. He should have been commanding the skyships from the sky. Back in the tent, Rocky saw Felly and Monty already waiting for him. N/O/vel/B//.C//.OM. Felly, what's the problem? As soon as he saw Felly, Rocky immediately asked, Sir, I spotted demons while patrolling. Without wasting any time, Felly directly said, and upon hearing this, Rocky couldn't help but take a deep breath. The demons came so soon? How many demons did you see? When are they likely to attack? As he spoke, Rocky was ready to leave the tent and lead his troops out to strike. But at that moment, Felly stopped him. Sir, please don't worry, we've scattered the demons, but I came back to report because something seemed off. What? Rocky sharply turned towards Felly, not understanding his meaning. Demons, you scattered them? Stay updated with Empire. Looking at Felly, Rocky clearly did not understand what he meant. So he asked, Tell me exactly what happened. Yes. Felly responded and said, Sir, when I was leading 2 skyships on patrol, we happened to see a few demons all moving in the same direction. I thought they were about to attack Backhill Village, so I immediately ordered the skyships to follow them. But then I discovered that the demons were not heading to attack Backhill Village. Instead, they were gathering together. What? After Felly finished speaking, Rocky was startled and asked, What do you mean the demons were gathering together? Demons from all directions were converging on one place. By the time we discovered them, more than 20 demons had already gathered. Fearing they might attack Backhill Village, I ordered the skyships to bombard them, scattering the gathered demons. In just a few words, Felly had summarized the situation to Rocky, and although his words were brief, they caused both Rocky and Monty to furrow their brows after hearing them. Demons gathering together? This discovery was extremely important. But how could this be possible? Rocky had never heard of such a thing before, so he looked to Monty, who had once been a demon hunter and was most knowledgeable about demon behavior. I've never encountered anything like this either, but if it's the black-eyed demon, it might be unusual, yet not impossible. After all, black-eyed demons are communal creatures. Seeing Rocky looking at him, Monty spoke up. Although he had never personally witnessed a similar situation, given the communal nature of black-eyed demons, it was not beyond the realm of possibility that they would gather and act together. No sooner had he finished speaking than Felly interjected, Sir, it wasn't just black-eyed demons that were gathering. There were other types of demons as well. Are you sure? With Felly's words, Monty was immediately taken aback and quickly followed up with, Felly, are you absolutely certain you weren't mistaken? Instructor, I'm absolutely sure because the other demons with the black-eyed demons had distinct features. They had 2 horns on their heads, and their heads looked like those of cows. They also had scale armor. When I ordered the skyships to bombard, the black-eyed demons were quickly dispersed, but these types of demons kept charging into the sky, so I definitely could not have been mistaken. The armored bull demons. Upon hearing Felly's description, Monty immediately recognized what type of demon he had seen, and his expression changed. Sir, Something isn't right here. Turning his head, Monty immediately said to Rocky, "Sir, if it were just black-eyed demons gathering together, perhaps it could be explained, but the presence of armored bull demons as well is very suspicious." Why? Because armored bull demons are solitary creatures. They are extremely territorial, and typically, there's only one armored bull demon per territory, never exceeding two. Feli, how many armored bull demons did you see? After hearing Monty's explanation, Rocky asked Feli. At least 3, I'm absolutely certain I wasn't mistaken. When faced with this question, Feli was very certain in his response. This made things clear. Different types of demons had gathered together for some unknown reason. This was the intelligence Feli had brought back, that N/O/vel/B//B// and a C///OM. This was extremely important intelligence, because if nothing unexpected happened, these gathered demons were most likely targeting Backhill Village. As this possibility emerged in his mind, Rocky could no longer remain calm. He hurriedly sent Monty to call Lin Feng and Lilia over, because they also needed to know about this. Not long after, Lin Feng and Lilia arrived at Rocky's tent, and Feli repeated what he had said before. Once he finished, Lin Feng and Lilia also fell into deep thought. "Captain Lin Feng, have you encountered this kind of situation before?" "No." Shaking his head at Rocky, Lin Feng frowned deeply. "In the past, during our mining, the attracted demons would immediately attack the village. They never gathered together like this." "So, you're saying that the demons are gathering this time because they are organized?" Realizing that Lin Feng had also never encountered such a situation, Rocky voiced his own thoughts. He believed that since different types of demons had gathered, including both solitary and social ones, their gathering must not be spontaneous, but organized. Impossible. "Rocky, it won't happen." "Right. How could demons possibly be organized?" No sooner had he finished speaking than he faced unanimous opposition from everyone, whether it was Lin Feng or Lilia, or even Monty. They all shook their heads as if they were spinning drums, indicating that he was completely wrong. This left Rocky somewhat bewildered. He didn't think he had said anything incorrect. His thought wasn't just blind conjecture. It had occurred to him right after the last battle. The reason the last battle had been so fierce was because there were too many demons. But why had the number of demons suddenly increased so much? Naturally, it was because of the lurking in the previous days. Before the battle occurred, the demons had completely disappeared for 6 days, and then suddenly appeared, continuing to emerge in 6 waves one after another. Could there be no connection between these two events? Rocky believed there must be a connection. It was precisely because the scattered demons had gathered together during those 6 days that the attack was so fierce. Not only did Rocky believe that the demons were organized, but he also thought they were commanded. Otherwise, why would the exact count of 10 appear in each of the 6 waves of demons? So, he was perplexed as to where he had spoken incorrectly to face such unanimous rebuttal. Unfortunately, even after he shared his thoughts and rationale, Lin Feng, Lilia, and Monty still continuously shook their heads. "Rocky, the things you're thinking about simply aren't possible. Demons can't be organized, much less commanded." Even as Rocky tried his best to explain his ideas, Lilia still said, "Demons have occupied the land for a century, and since the very first day they appeared, these beasts have acted purely on instinct, regardless of whether they are high-level or low-level demons." Miss Lilia is correct. After Lilia finished speaking, Lin Feng also said, "Commander Rocky, I've lived in Backhill Village since I was born, but I've never heard of demons being organized. Moreover, if demons could be organized to act collectively, our Backhill Village would have been annihilated long ago, right? More than just Backhill Village. If demons could be organized and obey commands, I'm afraid these beasts wouldn't only occupy the land. They would have taken to the skies long ago." As Lilia, Lin Feng, and Monty spoke, they shook their heads. Not one of them thought Rocky's idea was correct, even going so far as to find it somewhat ludicrous.
Hello, everyone. As we wrap up this video, I want to share a quick note. I have a Patreon account. If you'd like to support me and enjoy on-demand audiobooks, you can become a Patreon member. Alternatively, you can check out my Google Drive link, which has 500 plus novel audiobooks available through my Ko-fi or Patreon shop. I appreciate your support.